And here we go again, everyone. Welcome to WKYC.com's coverage of the 2018 NFL Draft. I'm Dave DeNatale, along with my colleague from the WKYC Digital Sports team, Matt Florjancic, and former Cleveland Brown, former Bowling Green wide receiver, Cleveland's own Steve Sanders. Gentlemen, we're at it again. The Cleveland Browns are on the clock. They've essentially been on the clock for 364 days. And the NFL universe, again, on the Browns as they come into tonight, not just with the first overall pick, but the fourth overall pick as well, Matt.
Yeah, it's a busy time for the Browns. I don't think I can remember a time where they had two first-rounders that were so close together. And they really have an opportunity to get impactful players that can change the face of and the direction of their franchise, something that's been much needed really since they came back in 1999, but especially over the last few years. They have to do something to get impact players here that can impact the 2018 Browns, and we're going to see how this first round plays out. It's going to be very interesting, Dino.
Steve Sanders, I think the word of the day, first word you said when you kind of walked in the door and we were getting ready for the show, playmakers. The Browns need playmakers. There are no shortage of playmakers out there if they stay at 1, if they stay at 4, and we'll talk more about trade down scenarios and things like that a little later on. But the opportunity is now here. The Browns were 1-31 over the last 2 years to get them to this point tonight.
Yeah, I think we need playmakers. I'm with Matt. If we can get the guys on the field that can be game changers on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball, I think we can begin to see some progress and begin to see this thing turn around. I think we have our quarterback for now for probably 3 years, if you ask me. So if we do take a quarterback, they probably sit and learn for a little while. But at the same time, you know where I'm thinking at 1, but I'll hold my pick until we get to that point.
Yeah, real quick, Matt, you saw the graphic there just a second ago. Steve was kind of breaking it down. In addition to having 2 picks here tonight, I mean, the Browns have 3 second-round picks. No, right now in the 3rd round, but they've got 3 second-round picks to spend tomorrow night. They have stockpiled assets year after year, and it seems like it's been all coming to this weekend.
Assets are good. Players are better. They need playmakers. They need guys that can be impactful this year and beyond. You did all that dealing to get to this point. Now's the time to make sure those picks become something of value for this franchise. This is your opportunity to really make hay in a division that is going to see a turnover in the next couple of years, with Ben Roethlisberger getting up there in age, Joe Flacco's contract really hamstringing the Ravens, and you never know what you're getting out of Cincinnati. The Browns have 5 legitimate first and second round picks that in theory should result in at least 3 starters for this team for the 2018 season. I'm not saying you have to hit on all of them, but you have to hit on the majority of them if you want to make all that suffering that we saw for 2 and 3 years worth everything that you went through.
Absolutely. Okay. So that kind of lays things out for you here as we get ready for the draft. As we get closer now, we're about 30 minutes away from when the Browns will officially be on the clock with that first overall pick. What is happening right now with the Cleveland Browns? Let's check in with the voice of the Browns. He is also Channel 3 sports anchor. He is also the host of Donovan Live. He is also the co-host of the Donovan Live postgame show, Jim Donovan, joining us. And Jimmy, quarterbacks have been all the rage in this offseason here for the Browns. The guy who maybe we thought was the front runner, maybe going into today, is now maybe the second horse to a guy that just won the Heisman Trophy in Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, Dino, I'll tell you, there is a mood out here in Berea right now that Baker Mayfield, all of the talk about him, especially in the last 2 days, and all of today, certainly, is very real. That the Browns love Baker Mayfield, that they were wowed by him, that Scott McCloughan, who came in to join John Dorsey as a consultant after Scott McCloughan left the Washington Redskins, was always a big fan of Baker Mayfield. So he was kind of preaching Mayfield's case to the Browns front office once he arrived here. But the more they got to know him, the more they watched his tape, the more they saw him in person, the more they watched his workout at his pro workout day. But especially when he came to Berea, they were wowed by him. And it appears as though all the talk about him and the Browns being comfortable at making him the #1 pick come the top of the hour is very real, which really shocks me because I did believe that they were going to go in a different direction. But there are a lot of people saying it's not just smoke. There's some fire to this, that the Browns feel that Baker Mayfield is the way to go. The things that they love, basically, if you go back to about a week ago when John Dorsey, in his pre-draft press conference, met with the media, and he wasn't specific about a lot, but the one thing that you can pull out from what he was saying and then attach that to Baker Mayfield, he said, listen, guys, the thing I really want in a quarterback is I want him to be able to win. And they feel that this guy, with the fire that he plays with, and with the physical skills that he has, he puts himself at the top of the Browns list, which to me is very surprising. I really thought it was Sam Darnold. I thought that there was a lot of consideration to the power arm of Josh Allen. I never thought Josh Rosen was a part of the equation, but I definitely thought press conferences to this draft by saying, by the way, everybody, Tyrod Taylor is our starting quarterback. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, no matter who we draft. That is in sharp contrast to the character of Baker Mayfield, and I don't know if that tune is going to change if they make this pick at #1, but just knowing what Baker Mayfield is all about, and you just go back to his college career, he always had to fight to win the job, and he would win it. He won it at Texas Tech. He transferred to Oklahoma. Travis Knight was the incumbent as the quarterback there after he had that big bowl game win over Alabama, and that he was going to be the guy that would control the Sooner offense. Baker Mayfield beat him out and then went on his merry way and won the Heisman Trophy. Everything about Baker Mayfield says, competition, I want it, and if I get it and it's fair, I'm going to win it. And it goes against what we've heard the plan is for this upcoming season if Baker Mayfield joins this roster.
Jimmy, we saw last year that Cody Kessler was named the starting quarterback in the offseason workouts and at the start of training camp. Tyrod Taylor's already been named the starting quarterback. Are we in a similar situation as last year where it's not an open competition per se, but it very well might play itself into one throughout the camp and preseason games?
Well, you know, Matt, I would say no. I would say that, I really do believe they want to play Tyrod Taylor. Now, this is a different situation than last year with Brock Osweiler and Kessler and Kevin Hogan and Deshaun Kaiser. I mean, it really is different. I mean, Tyrod Taylor's got some chops. I mean, he's won some football games, and let's face it, with the way it's gone at quarterback the last couple of years for the Browns, that's a very, very good thing to have on your resume. The other thing is he won in Buffalo. He won in a tough division. He took them to the playoffs last year. He's got a lot going for him. Plus, basically, he's on a one-year deal here. He's eligible to become a free agent next season. I think that was all taken into consideration when that deal was made, just before free agency started, that was going to be the way they were going to go. That's what they wanted to do. They wanted to get a guy to come in here that could be, and I know it's an overused term now, that bridge quarterback, but Taylor fit that description perfectly to be able to come in here. He knew that they were kind of lukewarm about him up in Buffalo, looking for other quarterbacks. So he comes here. It's a good deal for him. It's a good deal for the Browns to try and change the culture and win. And now you may have a situation where you're going to have a real itchy young quarterback come in here who is going to be the #1 overall selection in the draft, whoever it is. And you wonder if it would become an open competition. I don't think that's the deal that Taylor signed up for.
Jim, there's a lot of talk around the first pick in the draft, but obviously we have the #4 pick. What are you hearing the Browns are going to do with the #4 pick?
Well, Steve, I think the Browns really really like Bradley Chubb, the pass rusher extraordinaire, you might say, from North Carolina State. I think that they feel right now that if they could envision if he was available at number 4, I don't think it would be a difficult decision with what they think of him to put his name on the card, hand it in, and make it a deal to come here, team him up with Myles Garrett, Emmanuel Ogbah, Larry Ogunjobi, some of the other young defensive up-front players that they have. And now suddenly that changes the dynamic of their pass rush. You know, last year there was a very brief period of time when Myles Garrett and Ogbah played together, because remember, Garrett had the high ankle sprain at the early part of the year, so Ogbah was playing by himself. And then once Garrett got healthy, they played together for a short period of time. In that short period of time, you could see the dynamics of having two guys that can really get to the quarterback. But then Ogbah broke his foot, so he was out for the remainder of the year. And then that meant that Garrett, playing on a high ankle sprain all season long, had to go it by himself. But I think they feel that Chubb is the guy that they like. Now, if he's not there, if he's off the board at number 4, for instance, if the Giants took him at number 2, and that would be the target area for him if he was going to go before number 4. But if the Giants took him and he's not available at number 4, then I think the Browns are open to listening to a possible deal to go down in the first round. But now you got to be careful. I don't think they want to go too far down.
No, and I don't think any of us want them to go too far down either. We've done that song and dance quite a bit. Speaking of trade, last thing, Jimmy, is there any way, I was thinking about this, with all this, the late Baker Mayfield hoopla that's happened in the last couple days, any chance that, well, the Browns could draft Baker Mayfield first overall, but perhaps holding him for a trade a la what we saw Ernie Accorsi do with Eli Manning and Phillip Rivers, you know, where maybe you draft a guy, but then you execute a trade and maybe you pick up an extra asset while you're doing it?
Yeah, you know, Dino, that has a little bit of an NBA flavor to it there, but I don't think so. I think that I think the number 1 pick, whoever it is, and if it is Mayfield, and there are a lot of reports saying that, I think that's the pick. I think that's the guy they want. That's who, you know, they've made this decision. Now, remember, there's a report today saying that this decision, whoever it is, was arrived at by John Dorsey 6 weeks ago. And 4 weeks ago, then Jimmy Haslam and Dee Haslam were informed of Dorsey's inkling of who he was going to pick. And Hugh Jackson was informed 2 days ago as to what they were going to do with that number 1 pick. The other thing, Dino, I think is there was a scenario where a lot of people thought that maybe the Browns are floating the Mayfield liking of him out there to the rest of the NFL to see if somebody who really wants Mayfield might want to come up to number 1 and then make the deal. The target early would have been the Jets at number 3, but I'm hearing really that the Jets, I mean, if Mayfield was there at number 3, they would probably take him. But if he's not there at number 3, that would probably mean that Darnold might be there at number 3, and they would be very comfortable taking Sam Darnold to be the future quarterback of the New York Jets. But as far as taking Mayfield and then trading him, I have not heard that as being a possibility. I think whoever they take at number 1 is the guy they wanted at number 1.
Maybe it's just wishful thinking on my part. All right, Jimmy, we'll let you go, get into the building, and kind of get settled in for these first couple of picks, and we will catch up with you as this night progresses, what figures to be another memorable draft night here in Cleveland.
Let's hope so. Thanks. I'll see you later.
You got it. That's Jim Donovan, the voice of the Browns, joining us from team headquarters in Berea. And real quick, guys, because I want to get some social reaction here on our show, but takeaways here from what you heard from Jimmy.
Wow, I mean, Bradley Chubb at 4. Obviously, we don't know what we're going to do at number 1, but it's seeming like it's going to be a quarterback. But, you know, I'm still stuck on big-time playmakers, and I want to know where Saquon Barkley is going to fall.
If Barkley's on the table at 4, it'd be really hard to turn that card in with another name on it besides his. I mean, he's so explosive.
Even over Chubb.
Even over Chubb, because they're devoid of talented playmakers on offense, Dino. I mean, they did some rebuilding in the offseason to improve themselves, but you never have enough talent.
All right.
And the Browns especially know that's true.
Let's go to the Barkley thing for a second, because, you know, Steve, coming out of the Combine, I mean, he was all the rage. He put on an electric show, ran well, didn't really have to do anything at his pro day. I mean, scouts showed up, but he didn't really need to do anything. He kind of left it all out there in Indianapolis. It seemed like he was the consensus number 1 best player in the draft. why isn't he the number one? Why isn't he going to be the number one pick? Is it just this mentality that you've got to have a quarterback? And it's not just the Browns, it's other teams. You got to have the quarterback, got to have the quarterback. It seems like it supersedes going after what many believe is the best player.
And I think it's for a couple reasons. Obviously, the most important reason being that the quarterback is the most important position on your team. If you don't have a quarterback, you can't win. So we need a franchise quarterback. So that is the first reason. The second reason is that the value of a running back has been diminished so much over the past maybe 5 years or so. The fact that they don't want to spend that type of, what do you want to call it, type of value at number 4. Even though you saw last year Leonard Fournette and the year before you saw Ezekiel Elliott.
Yes.
And then you saw Todd Gurley go a little bit later. And if you ask me, if I asked you a question, if I said Le'Veon Bell was up for a trade, would you trade the number 1 or number 4 pick for him?
More than likely,
I think I think
for number 4.
For number 4,
if
I think I would.
Guaranteed that I could get him to a long-term extension.
I think I would. If I could have him locked up.
And the reason I make that comparison because I think Saquon Barkley is Le'Veon Bell.
Well,
I think he's a 3-down back who can block, who can catch, who can run the ball, who can have explosive plays on the field. That is the same thing as Ezekiel Elliott and other guys.
And to your point, I think Trent Richardson, fairly or unfairly, turned a lot of teams off to taking a running back so high in the draft. And by the way, he had a great rookie year before the Browns traded him. But I think because of Elliott and because of Fournette, because of Gurley, I do think teams are starting to value the running back again. So, what do you think out there, though, fans? That's what we want to know. I mean, it's not just our show tonight. We want to put things out there for you to get involved. Stephanie Metzger from our digital team is watching what you're saying on Twitter, what you're going to be saying on Facebook. She's out on the touchscreen right now. And, Steph, what are you seeing here as we really now about 10 minutes away from the start of the draft?
Well, Dino, there's been no shortage of opinions going on social media, as you know, with Browns fans. So let's take a look and see what some of the fans are saying here. So Mitch here says, Browns need to get Darnold and then get another rusher in Chubb to match up with Garrett. Don't overthink it. Now Brendan here says, Chubb and Klee isn't just a duo with Garrett, it's a trio with Agba too. Tired of people forgetting about him. So there are a couple people out here who are interested in Chubb. All right, so this one here says, like we've said many times, Baker Mayfield and Josh Rosen are the best 2 QBs today. Not sure that'll be the case a year or 2 down the road. Eric here, this is from earlier this morning. He tweeted, good morning to everyone, especially LeBron after last night's game, but especially not Josh Allen. So he's maybe not high on him. And Ryan here says, I hope someone high up in the Browns organization for the draft has Saquon Barkley no matter what written on a piece of paper. So a couple people here are also not so interested in the QBs, but they're looking at Saquon Barkley. Guys, back to you.
All right, Steph. Right
well
there,
done on that tweet.
You sure that tweet was it Steve Sanders 365 on that tweet?
I'm over here, kind of. I got an alias.
It's interesting. The tweet before Saquon Barkley mentioned Josh Allen, quarterback from Wyoming. On your final mock draft today, Matt, and let's understand, mock drafts are so fluid, especially on a day like today, but you thought the Browns, and you weren't the only one, you thought the Browns were going to go with a quarterback, but Josh Allen, the big, tall quarterback, the guy with the big physical tools from Wyoming, and some things have happened in the last 12 to 24 hours that I don't know if Allen was on the Browns' radar for one. I think he was at some point, but I wonder if Allen's going to take a fall today.
Oh, there's no question he's taking a fall. How far it goes, we don't know. But for those of you that don't know, some racially insensitive tweets came out from Josh Allen's account. They were attributed to him
from his high school days,
early
15 years old
days. So that definitely caught people's attention, and it's been probably the biggest story of the day heading into what will be the first round tonight. And I don't know that it turned a lot of people off, but as soon as I saw that, I pretty much wanted to throw my mock draft out the door because I knew as soon as those came out, he was off the table at 1. He's probably off the table, I would think, for the first 4 picks. I think at 5 or later, he'll come off the board, but he's going to take a little bit of a fall.
Well, I think he was going to fall anyway, and I don't think the tweets really had too much to do with it. But there is a valuable lesson here to be learned for our young viewers out there. Be careful what you post on social media. Even if it's 5, 6 years ago, people will go in your past and they will look and dig and pry. And even colleges are doing it now to look at who players that they're recruiting, or even for a general admission to a college. So you got to be careful what you put on social media, because it can come back to bite you.
Yeah, from what I read, his Twitter account was vetted in January, as I'm sure his agent, whoever he had hired at that time for his agents, got him ready for the combine and ready for the pre-draft hoopla. The offensive tweets at the time were removed, but even when you delete and remove, there's always somebody who takes a screenshot who's got it. And unfortunately, he called Stephen A. Smith of ESPN late last night or early this morning to try to explain and to try to make sure that people knew how bad he felt about it. And it's gotten people talking. But like you said, Steve, I started to feel anyway that Mayfield had kind of surpassed him as the other quarterback, the 1A with Darnold.
Yeah, and then the internet is written in permanent ink. You can delete, but you can never erase. Once it's out there, it's out there. But I think the young man is poised. I think he's a good young man. He showed great character so far. So I don't think it's going to hurt him per se, but it is bad press right now.
It's a heck of a lesson to learn, and it's going to cost him a couple $1 million probably.
It's interesting. We saw, as we were talking, you saw at home the scene out at the Muni Lot as fans are just literally right down the patio from us watching at the Browns official watch party tonight. I wonder, there you can see it now. I wonder what the reaction is going to be if Roger Goodell in about 15, 20 minutes says with the first pick, the Cleveland Browns select Baker Mayfield, quarterback, Oklahoma. I see our Will Ewick is getting himself situated here. We'll hear from Will in just a second. Actually, Will, can you hear me, buddy? I hear you pointing to your ear. Can you hear me? Now, Will could hear me, but we couldn't hear him. We'll get him on in a second. But I just wonder, guys, people have really evaluated Mayfield closely. There are reasons. Okay, let's go back to Will, and then we'll get to the Mayfield point here. Will is now standing by down at the Muni Lot as he is surrounded by thousands of friends and family members around there. Will, what's the mood down here as we get ready for the start of the draft?
Well, you're exactly right. Everybody's family down here tonight. This is one giant party. It's really hard to hear. Obviously, they got the speakers blaring. Everyone very excited. A lot of conversations going on, but I got to tell you, it's the same conversation. It could be 1,000 different ways and 1,000 different groups, but everyone's having the same conversation here right now, and that is what the Browns should do at number 1 and what they think the Browns are going to do at number 1. I saw a lot of games going on earlier, and even as they're playing, nobody's talking about the weather. Nobody's really talking about the Cavs win last night. Everybody's talking about the Browns and what they're going to do here, number 1. And it's all centered around the quarterback, guys. I'm sure you've been talking about this the entire show, but it's Sam Darnold, it's Baker Mayfield, it's Josh Allen. Everyone has a reason why they like one in particular. This guy here, he seems to like his water that he's selling, so I'm going to take a couple steps over. But that's what it is. Everyone's talking about the quarterback that they like, and they all like different quarterbacks for different reasons. But you know what? This month-long speculation, opinion, feeling, it's coming to an end here in just a few minutes, guys.
Yeah, I for one, I really look forward to, I was saying right before we tossed it to you, what the reaction is going to be if it's Baker Mayfield, who is pretty polarizing, rightly or wrongly, for things we've seen on the field. Things have happened off the field, his competitive nature, his similarities to a former Browns quarterback. I wonder what you're in for down there.
Yeah. That's the interesting thing. Obviously, Baker Mayfield, that rumor came about a little bit more recently here, and I think I heard them almost talking themselves into it. There would be one person that was kind of a pro-Baker guy, and I talked to this one guy who was very adamant about Josh Allen earlier, and as he kind of started hanging out with his friends here a little bit, and the one guy kept talking about the pros of Baker Mayfield, by the end of my experience with him at the tailgate, he was in the Baker camp. So I think that's kind of how Browns fans are. They all have their opinions now, but when the pick is made, they're going to get behind whoever it is, and they're all going to be rooting for this person. They're going to be expecting this person to be the new savior. But the initial reaction is going to be priceless, and that's why this camera that we have right here is set up to get that, to get the faces, to get that initial reaction. When that name comes out, you're going to see some arms go up, you're going to see some people boo, and it's going to be priceless because you don't know exactly how many is going to be in one camp or the other. But as I mentioned, I think you guys know this, we've been through it before. They'll all talk themselves into it by the end of the month here, and by the time season rolls around, there's going to be a lot of jerseys for whoever goes number one, probably flying off the shelves.
Absolutely. All right, we will let you get settled here, Will, as we are just about to start the official start time of the NFL Draft at the top of the hour. We will check in with you in a little bit. Thank you, my friend. All right, that's Will Ewick down at the Muni Lot, just down, right, again, stone's throw away from us.
He's 100% right. Browns fans have their opinions on who they should take, but as soon as that pick is made, everybody's going to rally behind them, and jerseys will fly off the shelves.
All right. Baker Mayfield. Let's get into it here because
rip the Band-Aid off.
Let's rip the Band-Aid off and let's get to it. On the pro side, his stats at Oklahoma off the charts. 71% of his passes completed this past year. 4,600 yards, 43 touchdown passes, only 6 picks. So the great touchdown to interception ratio you look for. He also ran for 5 touchdowns. He was the Heisman Trophy winner. He got Oklahoma into the college football playoff. Everybody you ask down in Norman will tell you he's a great teammate. He's a great leader. He runs that offense. He runs that huddle, and he's the guy you want to get behind. Yeah,
by all accounts, those who know him best really vouch for his character and really love the guy. Baker Mayfield is one of the most popular teammates that we've heard come out in the draft in quite some time. But from an opponent standpoint, he's also probably one of the most vilified. I mean, it's him and Manziel probably are the two most scrutinized quarterbacks, and a lot of it has to do with their slender size.
Steve Sanders, look at that profile right there. Mm-hmm. The biggest knock on field, I'm talking about just in terms of Mayfield, not in attitude maturity, which we'll get to in a second, that height, 6'1".
Yeah, this is definitely a challenge when you look at it on paper, but you see quarterbacks like Russell Wilson or Drew Brees who had success in this league. So I don't think the height part of it is really going to play a major factor in the NFL. If you can play ball, you can play ball. I love his fire. I love the fact that he's a leader. If I was still playing, I would humble most. So I think he's a great pick. I just don't see how he's the number 1 pick when I feel as though we can get him at number 4. So why waste the number 1 pick when we could really obviously let him fall in our laps at number 4?
You think the Jets would let him go? If let's say the Browns, if General Manager Steve Sanders is calling the shot, Browns would take Barkley at 1. Let's just say.
Absolutely.
Giants at 2. They could take either Darnold, we've heard, because they really like him,
or
Chubb.
If they take Chubb, and at 3, the Jets are sitting there with their choice between Darnold And Baker Mayfield, they're going with Darnold.
And then in your mind, in that scenario, Baker would fall to 4,
Yep.
and then you'd have the best of both worlds. And a wide receiver's dream to have his quarterback and a running back right with them playmakers.
I'm telling you, the reason I love this draft is because down to the last minute, everybody's talking, everybody's buzzing, because we don't know what's going to happen at number 1. And it's going to be a domino effect after that. So this is some real exciting stuff.
Yeah, we all talked about how the Giants really held the key in this draft, but with all the rumors that have come out in the last 12 or so hours, the Browns are really in the catbird seat to get things done for their franchise and really steer the direction of this entire draft. It's going to be an interesting 45 minutes when they go on the clock the first time, and then when they hopefully will stay on the clock at number 4 and not deal out of that spot. It's going to be very interesting to see how the dominoes fall. But really, the Browns and the Giants can steer the entire direction of the top 10 with just 2 simple selections.
Yeah, one of the challenges I'm having a tough time wrapping my head around is what Jim mentioned earlier. If we take Baker Mayfield at 1, we create a quarterback controversy.
No question.
Haven't we had enough of that here in Cleveland?
Amen.
Yes. You have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterback. So why would we put ourselves in that position to continue to have headache after headache? I mean, it's insanity to continue to do the same things over and over again and expect a different result.
That's right. Because here's the difference from Mayfield to Darnold. Darnold only played 2 years at USC. He's only 20 years old. So, I mean, there's still some physical maturing left to do. Mayfield's 23. He's got 3 years of seniority on him. Darnold has at least the outward appearance of a guy that, okay, you want to sit me down for a year and I'll sit with Drew Stanton and watch the whiteboard or watch films while Tyrod Taylor's getting ready to play week after week. Fine, no problem. I don't get that sense with Baker Mayfield. I just don't. I get the sense that if Mayfield is the guy, then we are in for a summer of charting throws on every training camp to see who had more incompletions, Taylor or Mayfield, and then we're valuing quarters in preseason games, and it gets to be a circus.
And it becomes a challenge for Tyrod Taylor because he knows that you have Baker Mayfield breathing down his back. You have the media, you have the fans. He throws an interception. We lose a game. All of a sudden, it's Baker Mayfield time. It's Baker Mayfield time. So it's hard to play quarterback when you know your job is on the line every single week. You know, guys like Drew Brees or guys like Aaron Rodgers, they don't have to worry about that because they know they're the guy every single Sunday. So they prepare as the guy. When you have to question if you're going to be the starter or if you're going to be the backup, week after week, that's a tough position to be. And it's taking your attention and distracting you away from really what you should be focusing on, which is the game.
You know, for a general manager in John Dorsey, he prides himself on studying history and being a student of the game. He has not looked at a single thing that's happened with this Browns organization in the last 10 years if he thinks this is a good idea. Because I'll go back to 2014 when they had Brian Hoyer start the year at 7-4. All of a sudden, he has a clunker of a game. Boom, everybody's pining for Johnny to play.
Including the general manager texting the offensive coaching staff.
And the season went off the rails from there. They went from first place in November to last place in the division. That's a pretty hard thing to do in just 6 weeks.
All right, now, while we are sitting here in Arlington, Roger Goodell, I can hear the booze. I can hear the booze in my ear, so that can only mean one thing. Roger Goodell down in Arlington is walking to the podium to welcome fans to the draft, and in just moments he will declare that the Cleveland Browns are officially on the clock. And you can see now, meanwhile, while that's happening at the watch party, fans, as I look at the faces, it reminds me of, and I'm not trying to compare one to the other, but it just reminds me of like The Decision, where the fans are looking up there and just expecting the worst and hoping for the best.
That's Cleveland fans in a nutshell. Yeah, that's what we do.
And again with Mayfield, it's not. We can touch on more of the red flags. There's another thing I think at play here. Big 12 quarterbacks tend to run that spread offense that, basically it's the video game offense that a wide receiver loves because you're going to get lots of catches and you're going to get lots of points, and it's great to watch in college, but it's not the system that Todd Haley and Hugh Jackson are going to run in Cleveland. So that's another thing to consider. Whereas a guy like Sam Darnold, a guy like Josh Allen, they've run the pro offense before. There's going to be a big learning curve for Mayfield.
Yeah, in addition to that, Big 12 quarterbacks, I believe the statistic was they've only had 58 wins in all the quarterbacks that have come from the Big 12, I think, over the past 10 years. So that's an alarming number coming out. They're not winning in the NFL. Their talent isn't translating over to the field, to the pro level. So it does matter if you ran a pro-style offense or if you ran a kind of a run-and-gun type of offense in college. It matters a lot.
We've seen what defensive backs out of the Big 12 can and cannot do at the
and you kind of make if he's drafted by the Browns at #1, which I do not agree with.
There's no question it's going to be a steep learning curve. And those antics that worked at Oklahoma when you had a ton of backup and you were playing on a really, really good team, when you're on a not so really good team and you're playing against the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Baltimore Ravens on the road and you try that, you won't do it a second time.
There's one thing, Jimmy talked about this, about, when Mayfield's been in competition that he felt was fair, he went out and he won it. There was one case, though, at Texas Tech. He played there as a freshman, as a walk-on freshman, won 5 games, but was injured. And Cliff Kingsbury, the head coach, wanted to have a competition going into 2014 between Mayfield and Davis Webb, who ended up going to Cal. And Mayfield, who was a walk-on, said, no, thank you, I'm out of here. And he went north to Oklahoma. I mean, again, it's a long time ago, Steve. Do you take anything into that?
Not necessarily, because he went to Oklahoma, he competed, he won the job there, and he became a Heisman Trophy winner. So he's won games. I think that's in his past. But I'll make a little bit of a transition here, because I think the Browns are kind of playing cat and mouse, and I think Barkley is going to go #1.
You're going with Saquon.
I think Saquon Barkley is going to go #1.
You are right, my man. I would love to see
I wouldn't hate it. I wouldn't hate it. I absolutely would not be upset. Barkley, again, the running back from Penn State. I know there were Browns fans, who say, "Well, I watched tape on Barkley. He didn't play very well against Ohio State." Yeah, he played well against everybody else.
Did you miss the opening?
I was going to say the opening kickoff.
The opening kickoff was pretty awesome.
98 yards that way. It's pretty good.
Like I said, he has been compared to Le'Veon Bell, a 3-down back. That's been one of the other things with the Browns. They've had running backs who can be on the field for 1st and 2nd down, and then you got to take it out and bring in Duke Johnson for 3rd down. Barkley could be the guy to stay on the field, and he can also help you out as a receiver and in special teams.
Yeah, I mean, the guy is a phenomenal playmaker. Now, it does kind of look a little bit cloudy when you got Carlos Hyde, that we just signed and gave him guaranteed money. Right. You got Duke Johnson, who's played well for us over the years. Now, I think we can move one of those 2 players, and we can continue to have some success with a 3-down back with Saquon Barkley. But I love playmakers. I love a guy who can put his foot in the ground and can take it 80 yards and change a game like that.
The way running backs get used in this league, you need depth at the position. Carlos Hyde and Duke Johnson are not enough to get through this NFL season, Steve. And to add a dynamic playmaker like Saquon Barkley into the mix, you basically get a thunder and lightning situation. With Carlos Hyde being your bruising back that can absorb contact and run through it, Saquon Barkley can do a little bit of everything.
Well, don't forget, too, as well, who our offensive coordinator is going to be. Todd Haley, coming from Pittsburgh. Look at this comparison. You have Landry. I would compare him in this system. He's going to be Antonio Brown. You got Josh Gordon. He's going to go for the deep ball, throw it up 50-50 balls. That's Martavius Bryant. And now, if we can draft this guy, Barkley, and get him as a 3-down back in a playmaker, that's Le'Veon Bell. And you just reinvented the Pittsburgh Steelers with Todd Haley.
We are under 5 minutes to go before the Cleveland Browns make their pick. We're now at 4 minutes. I'm scanning Twitter here, folks, just to see if there's any indication. There's still no indication. It could still be Sam Darnold.
One of the things we haven't touched on yet, Dino, and maybe we'll wait till after the pick, but what does a selection of Baker Mayfield mean for the coaching staff? If they're held in the dark until this week, and they've got to work with somebody that the front office loves, but they're not so in love with, what does that say about Hugh Jackson's future and the future of this team?
Well, it was reported, I think, by Adam Scheffler. He mentioned that 2 days ago, Hugh Jackson found out who the pick was. 6 weeks ago, Dorsey told, or 4 weeks ago, he told the ownership who he's going to pick. So Dorsey already knows who he wants and the pick he's going to go with at number 1. So, I hear your point, but at the same time, you got to get on the wagon. If you're Hugh Jackson,
you absolutely have to.
You're 3 games away from not having a job.
You're absolutely right. I mean, 1-31 speaks for itself, but if you start off in an 0-3, 0-5, or God forbid 0-7 and beyond, you're packing your bags and you're on the road.
See you.
You're down I-71 towards Cincinnati.
Yeah, exactly. As we cross under 3 minutes until the clock expires, there's already been reports that Baker Mayfield has been on the telephone. That's usually. Now, sometimes
could be a smoke screen.
It could be a smoke screen.
We're hoping, but
I would suspect that if you like to go buy jerseys, probably a number 6 jersey will be the next pick of the Cleveland Browns.
I hope you're wrong.
we both do.
Yeah,
we both do. And Dino, I think even you think you want to be wrong.
Mayfield to me, I just think with the first overall pick
is in.
You want the guy with limited to 0 question marks, and I'm not talking about the maturity. I'm talking about the size, the playing in the Big 12 spread offense. I just think that Darnold checked a lot more of the boxes for the quarterback of the future than Baker Mayfield does. The pick is in, so we should find out here momentarily, but we think it is going to be Baker Mayfield, your quarterback of the Cleveland Browns, in just a moment. Albert Berea of Sports Illustrated MMQB tweeting that as such.
Did you think at the beginning of the week that this was possible?
No. It was 2 days ago. That was the first time I kind of heard more of the buzz, and I remember talking to Jim Donovan about it on the postgame show. We both thought it was a smokescreen to try to get teams to move up, maybe get that 4th pick away from the Browns, or go to 2 and execute a trade, get past the Jets. I did not see this as a fit for the Cleveland Browns. I really didn't. I am going to be on pins and needles later tonight to hear John Dorsey explain the rationale for this pick.
Yeah, that's gonna be tough for us to understand. He's really putting I'd say his reputation on the line with that pick.
As Roger Goodell takes the stage, we'll let you watch it from the Muni Lot here. Yeah, there it is. You can see the crowd as they're about to get it here. It's going to be nuts.
Baker Mayfield.
I'm stunned.
That's about the reaction I thought you'd see.
It's reserved, but there's a lot of dejectedness in there.
Yeah. Now, you guys are right. In a month, fans may have talked themselves into this pick. I'm saying right now, absolutely, you're seeing dejection on faces because this is not the guy Browns fans wanted to see. And Matt, they see 2014 all over again. Heisman Trophy quarterback, highly touted, brash, a little arrogant, history of off-the-field problems. undersized. And they see.
Boy, that's a lot of X's in the column,
but isn't that true? I mean,
no,
is there anything wrong? Anything wrong there?
Everything you said is true, and that's why this makes absolute no sense to do it. Like, I know there are some people that are excited about it, but look at the Muni Lot.
Yeah, look at the Muni Lot. That's not a festive atmosphere.
This is not a happy
That is
bunch.
not a festive atmosphere.
And John Dorsey's got a lot of explaining to do when he takes the day. In Berea later tonight, and God help us if they trade the number 4 pick, Dino. Oh, you talk about a restless environment down there. I'm telling my man Will Ewick to be safe and look out, man. And because the people down there are going to be very upset.
All right, let's show you the measurables. Again, on the newest member of the Cleveland Browns, Baker Mayfield, young man from Austin, Texas, 6'1", 215 pounds. He is 23 years old. When you look at him from a comparison's sake, I did some digging on this, NFL.com and a couple other scouts. When they looked at him from comparison's sake, they compare Mayfield to a Doug Flutie or a Jeff Garcia. That kind of so.
We just saw Drew Brees comparison pop up there.
I've seen, and we've seen Drew Brees. I haven't. The only comparison to Drew Brees I've seen is the fact that they're both about 6'1", and Brees is actually shorter than that.
Right.
But in terms of NFL ceiling, I've seen comparisons to Flutie and upper side Garcia, former Brown, but a guy that with San Francisco had a nice run.
Yeah, I mean, I am stunned. I've heard all the buzz all day, and I just really didn't want to believe it. But this pick, to me, doesn't make sense. It really doesn't, because now you create a quarterback controversy. You got a guy who's fiery, who's a leader, who's going to come in here and want to play right away. And you also just brought in a pretty great free agent quarterback in Tyrod Taylor. So now we're back at square one.
Who you basically said, this is our guy. Yeah. This is our guy to start.
Well, and if I'm Tyrod Taylor too as well, I felt I was lied to.
Yeah,
you were absolutely lied to.
And I understand that it was a trade; it wasn't free agency. But yeah, I mean, now all of a sudden, can you trust what this front office and by extension, fairly or unfairly, this coaching staff tells you?
And the best organizations in this league are built on trust. And when you go into an offseason like this and you have a lack of trust or questionable ability to trust in your coaching staff or ownership or management, that's going to create some problems. I'm telling you, it's going to create a lot of problems.
That's going to be a very uncomfortable quarterback room when Mayfield reports for offseason workouts.
And I'm telling you, I don't think it would have been that way with Allen, and I don't think it would have been that way with Darnold.
Not at all. Those guys were, you knew that they were going to be learning and sitting and watching. Now Baker Mayfield, number one.
Now get ready for a summer of charting quarterbacks. All right. In addition to the three of us, we are very happy to be joined by we'll call him our special analyst. You follow him at Cleveland.com. Dennis Maniloff stopping by. D-Man, it is great to have you. Your reaction to what has just happened: Baker Mayfield, Heisman Trophy winner, now first overall pick for the Cleveland Browns.
I don't disagree with what I've heard from you guys. I went out on a video for Cleveland.com and I said, I'm not going to criticize John Dorsey because he knows his personnel better than I do, better than we do. He knows all about these guys. So maybe I'm being hypocritical here. I'm going to toe the line of criticism, at least ask the question. And I'm glad Steve's here as a former player, because to me, was Tyrod Taylor not done wrong in this situation? And I think you know the answer to that. I mean, to me, that's a rhetorical question. So, okay, I'll go ahead and I'll critique the pick. I don't get it. If you're going to trade for Tyrod Taylor and all but promise him the keys to the castle for at least 2018, you don't bring in as your number one overall pick a quarterback who is ready to start from day one.
Like that. Let me catch up just for a second. We'll get back to it. The New York Giants have taken Saquon Barkley, the preferred choice of one Steve Sanders. So Eli Manning is not going to have to look over his shoulder right away, and he's going to have best running back maybe he's had since the days of Tiki Barber and Jacobs and those guys.
Well, great for Saquon Barkley. I think it's a great landing place, a great market. He has some other weapons around him. He has a great seasoned vet quarterback. So he's going to have some success right away. But I think the Giants were waiting for the Browns to let this pick fall in their lap.
Yeah, they didn't take take them 10 minutes to turn the corner.
As soon as they saw that he wasn't the guy, they were probably jumping for joy because they knew that they just got the best player in the draft. And what most people think, even Jim Brown, this guy's going to be wearing a yellow jacket in 10 or 15 years.
I mean, what can you say? The Browns had it right in their hands to get the best player available, and they decided to go and create a quarterback controversy. I don't understand this. Dino, we scratched our heads when they traded last year.
Yeah.
I'm even more dumbfounded this year.
Than what we saw last year. Did you see that? Did you see this come in at all, Dennis? As the build up?
Not until the last 24 hours when Mayfield went banana, when the name was he's going to be the guy. He's going to be. Are you sure? But here's the thing, Dino. Think about one of your comps for Baker Mayfield, Doug Flutie.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
I mean, and you're right, but it's like, think about that. Doug Flutie as a comp for the #1 overall pick in the draft for a quarterback-starved organization?
We are not the Calgary Stampeders of the CFL. And I understand Flutie had success. The CFL, my favorite over there.
He had some success with the Toronto Argonauts too, my friend.
But understand, we want him. We want this quarterback to be, one of an elite player here in Cleveland.
Well, the way I look at it is this: if you compare the last 5 drafts, there's no way possible Baker Mayfield would be #1 in any of those drafts. So why is he #1 now? Because he's the best available, or he's a quarterback that's ready to go in and play? That doesn't mean you spend your #1 pick on a guy like this. And I'm not saying he's not going to have success or play great, but it's just really a big question mark of why you would waste the #1 pick, in my opinion, in that position.
On a scouting report, Mayfield will be somewhat scheme dependent, so whoever takes him will need to be willing to build their offense around his strengths.
Fantastic.
So now, Todd Haley and Hugh Jackson are going to have to, go crazy and to try to figure out how to make the offense, go for, have some spread elements to make Mayfield comfortable when you had a guy in Taylor who just seemed to be a prime fit for what Todd Haley tries to do.
Yeah, and now you got to get 2 quarterbacks ready for a week. You got to have 2 game plans, so to speak, ready. And I don't think that that's going to be a recipe for success. I tell you, I think we made a lot of great moves up until this point, up until that first pick. Dorsey was making some great things happen in the offseason.
Oh, the trade! I love the trades and free agency.
Yeah, everything was great. We were buzzing. And for a team that went 0-16, we were getting a lot of buzz, and everybody was getting some excitement. And now all of a sudden, this pick right here, you can just see from the Muni Lot, from the Browns fans, there's no excitement.
No, not at all. And the thing that you keep coming back to is you have a chance to really get a difference maker, and you get a guy who's compared to Doug Flutie and Jeff Garcia. Now, Jeff Garcia is the only quarterback for the Browns to win a season opener since they returned in 1999.
Correct.
They still finished that season with, what, 4 or 5 wins?
Yeah.
Okay, so this doesn't make sense. And to Steve's point, when you get a guy at the #1 overall pick, you get the best available player. In any other draft in the last 5 years, is Baker Mayfield a top 10 selection?
No.
Probably not.
Yeah.
If you thought Carson Wentz was a risk at 2 a few years back, what are you thinking about Baker Mayfield right now and the risk at 1?
And Flojo's talking about Mayfield in a vacuum. He's not even thinking about the Taylor aspect of it.
Right.
What you could argue that the pick of Mayfield is controversial in and of itself.
Right.
This organization went out and traded a 3rd-round pick to acquire a solid to good veteran QB who's got an incredibly good reputation with his teammates. So they added several layers of controversy to this pick by having Taylor already.
They got a guy who led the Buffalo Bills, who had the longest active playoff drought in the National Football League. He led them to the playoffs after getting benched, mind you, midway through the season.
Which was ridiculous,
and having
by
to
the
go
way.
back into the game because his replacement threw 5 interceptions in the first half. Tyrod Taylor is given next to no chance to succeed now, because now he's got the albatross, the elephant in the room, if you will, that Baker Mayfield's breathing down his neck.
You're setting yourself up for disaster, Steve.
But you also create an additional controversy with your playmakers. Look at Landry. He's come here with excitement.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's working out with Tyrod Taylor in the
Absolutely.
offseason. He's thinking he's building chemistry. He's looking at Tyrod Taylor. This is going to be my guy. We're going to make some magic happen. And all of a sudden, here you go, Baker Mayfield. Those guys are probably sitting in their living rooms looking like, what is this?
The pick is in for the New York Jets at number 3, and they took quite a bit of time. All three, you got 3 quarterbacks out there for New York. You have Sam Darnold, who I don't know if they thought was going to be out there for them, but you have Darnold, you have Rosen, and you have Allen. You've got all 3. But I just think it's got to be a quarterback here, and it would make sense. You've got McCown as a mentor. Bridgewater's going to get an opportunity to compete now with the Jets, and then you develop. Imagine that you develop the rookie, but he doesn't have to play right away and won't have the expectation to play right away.
I think the expectation was when the Jets made this trade, they were going to get Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
I think that's every mock draft I saw had the Jets taking Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, Josh Allen fall right into their lap, and they can get the pick of the litter.
I'm wondering here as Roger Goodell is going to head to the microphone.
Are we announcing a trade?
I was going to say, there may be a trade.
Oh, my goodness.
They may trade out.
This would be interesting if they decided to trade out here. So we're waiting to see the end result of it here. It is Sam Darnold is the newest member of the New York Jets. Now, by comparison, his NFL comparison, Andrew Luck. Darnold, 6'3".
Luck.
Yeah, exactly, Flutie.
If I didn't have indigestion before, Dino, I do now. Thank you.
6'3", 221 pounds. He's only 20 years old. 2 years with USC, and you look at the numbers: 67% completions in 2016, 31 touchdown passes, just over 3,000 yards, 9 interceptions. The problem was this past year, the interceptions and the fumbles kicked in. 26 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, but he also lost 9 fumbles. But what makes you say wow about Sam Darnold, his performance in big games. 2-0 against UCLA in the big rivalry game. 2-1 against Stanford, which is kind of like their secondary rival. Had 453 yards and a come-from-behind win against Penn State in the Rose Bowl with 5 touchdowns. 9-1 as a starter as a freshman, and then 11-3 last year. I know he didn't play well against Ohio State per se. Didn't play real well in Washington State, which was their only. They lost to Notre Dame as well, but that was the clunker, was losing to Washington State. But, D-Man, it just seemed like Darnold, for where the Browns are right now, checked all the boxes.
Yeah, I'm sure the Jets are ecstatic because they feel like McCown is the perfect mentor for Sam Darnold. And the other thing is, the good news here is the deck is clear for Bradley Chubb to be the number 4 overall pick. Please, John Dorsey. Limit the controversy to the number 1 overall by doing the sensible thing and taking Chubb at 4.
I've heard a lot of buzz. They could go Denzel Ward at number 4 too as well.
I would, and I would have no problem with that. And somebody could say, well, geez, you could trade down to maybe 7 and get Denzel Ward. You know what? If you like him, take him. This was the whole point. Of the trade down that the 3 of us just loathed last year with Houston to move from 12 down to 26 or whatever, which ended up taking Peppers. But the merit of it was you got to pick 4 because of Deshaun Watson getting hurt and the Texans having a bad finish to the year. You've got the opportunity now to get a player that and we don't know when Mayfield is going to see the field, but this guy that they're going to take with the 4th pick or whenever, we'll see the field right away. And you got to get a return on investment, no matter when Mayfield plays. You need to get a return on this investment right here.
He better play. right away.
Exactly.
Because you don't know what's going to happen with the quarterback spot. Although I think we can pretty much say that at some point this year, Baker Mayfield will see some significant
things have changed significantly.
First incomplete pass by Taylor in training camp, and they'll want Mayfield.
You know, the Baker Mayfield jerseys are flying off of the racks right now, and they probably just came hot off the press. I mean, that's how much buzz is going to be around that pick at number 1. Guy was a Heisman Trophy winner. He's the number 1 pick, and you think he's going to come in here and sit? Not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
No,
I don't think so.
Browns have 5 minutes to go here before they pick again with the 4th pick. Now, Bradley Chubb. Who is Bradley Chubb? Maybe a lot of you are asking. He kind of came on the radar really over the last month or so. Edge rusher from North Carolina State, Matt, and just this idea. And Steph showed the tweet a little bit earlier from one of the fans. And keep reacting. We'll get back to you, the fans, in a little bit.
Oh, I'm interested to see what the fans have to say about this one.
But Bradley Chubb on one side, and then on the flip side, Myles Garrett with Emmanuel Ogbah also. Don't want to forget about him.
Don't forget Crazy Carl.
Exactly. Crazy Carl. Now you turn now that edge position into a legitimate position of strength.
You absolutely do if you go with this. And the thing that I love most about Bradley Chubb, he's not a one-hit wonder. We saw a few years ago when they took Nate Orchard, he had 18.5 sacks his senior year. We had only 21 or 23.5 sacks his entire career. So he was a prototype of a one-year wonder. Chubb's had double-digit sacks in each of the last 2 years. He's proven over a prolonged period of time, even with people having the game plan for him and knowing that he's coming after their quarterback, he can still get home. And that is huge. You put him opposite Myles Garrett, and you have 2 bookend edge rushers that can really wreak havoc in opposing backfields. And given what you do or don't have on the offensive end, that is key. Yeah. That makes your secondary better without having to add anybody. That makes your linebackers be able to make more plays. If you solidify the defensive line with this choice, it is going to benefit the entire team.
I agree with Matt, because if you can put pressure on the quarterback without blitzing, that changes defenses. Obviously, we need some help in the secondary, but when you got 2 beasts up front that are going after the quarterback, especially in our division, I think this is a good pick at number 4 if we go with Chubb. Now,
of course, there is always the possibility of a trade down. The clock is under 3 minutes to go. Now all of a sudden, if you're a team, let's say, the Denver Broncos, I think, are okay to stay at 5. But if you're the Buffalo Bills at 12, and you're worried that both Josh Allen and Josh Rosen are going to be off the board by the time you pick, the 2 quarterbacks are already down now, is that worth spending both 12 and 22, Matt, to move up to 4? If you're Buffalo, I'm not talking about the Browns.
If you're Buffalo, it's absolutely worth it if you believe in Josh Rosen or Josh Allen. The thing with Josh Allen, he would be a perfect fit physically because playing in Buffalo, he's going to have to play through bad weather. And he has, experience doing it because in the Mountain West, you do see snow, and especially in Laramie, Wyoming. And he's got the biggest hands of the quarterbacks in this draft. He's one of the thicker body quarterbacks of this draft. He's prototypical for Buffalo if they decide to trade up.
Well, you can see the Muni Lot is ready here for another pick. The pick is in here for for the Browns.
How about we give these people something to cheer about?
Yeah, please. I mean, they've
let's get excited.
A lot of them have been camped out. Oh, we're about to be in for a surprise, and I think it's going to be a welcome surprise for one Steve Sanders.
Well, if I was an emoji right now, I would have this right now. You know that emoji right there, that would be me right now, or this one, because I don't understand what's happening right now.
Yeah.
You're not alone, Steve. Well, you are far from alone, my friend.
Now here's the other thing. As I'm starting to see some more tweets. The era of Browns not taking Ohio State Buckeyes in the first round is about to be done. I think Browns fans are going to like this pick.
All right.
As Roger Goodell heads to the podium, I think you're going to see a different reaction.
Denzel Ward?
Denzel Ward, the newest member of the Cleveland Browns.
There we go. I told you that was a great option, and they were buzzing about that. You got a lockdown corner.
And Denzel Ward really, is thought of as the best pure cornerback in this draft. I know Minka Fitzpatrick had a lot of buzz heading into it, but there was a question of what position really was Fitzpatrick best suited for. In Ward, you don't have to worry about that, Matt. He's a legit corner. Yeah,
no question about it. You definitely improve your secondary with this pick. Denzel Ward played behind two very good corners, Marshawn Lattimore and Garyon Conley, during his early days at Ohio State. Really came on strong this last year and played extremely well. Had 15 pass defenses, had a couple of interceptions, had career numbers across the board, had 30 solo stops, 37 total tackles, 2 for lost yardage. He's all around the ball. Like, he can make plays on the ball, whether it's in the air or whether it's coming at him in somebody's hands. This guy has good ball skills, and it's a solid pick. It helps the secondary. It doesn't give you that second edge rusher that we were hoping for, but it's definitely a pick that improves your defense, and it's somebody that should play right away.
Well, it's icing on the cake that the kid is local. He's from Nordonia High School. He's the greater Cleveland area. He went to Ohio State. We finally got a Buckeye in the first round. So that's icing on the cake, and I think he's going to be a great player in this league. I think he can play right away. He's going to be a starting corner, and he has a little bit of Joe Hayden flavor to him, where he's going to come in with some swag, and he's going to come in right away and lock some guys down.
I'm okay with that.
I am too. And you know what I like about this? You know, there might be some draft nicks tomorrow that say the Browns reached a little bit to make this pick. You know what? They identified who they liked, and they just went out and they picked him. They didn't trade down and try to get cute. He was there. They took him. They were decisive.
I like this pick, and I think it's less of a reach than the last pick we just made. I mean, there's no question that this pick is way far more in line with what you would expect positionally for this pick to come off the board in Denzel Ward than what Baker Mayfield did. But first and foremost, welcome home to Denzel Ward.
Absolutely.
We're glad to have a Buckeye come up I-71 and not have to play against him for a decade. We get a guy that is Northeast Ohio through and through, went down to the big university in Columbus, and will be able to make impact plays in the secondary. That's something we were devoid of last year. Look, Joe Hayden was the best corner that we had over the last 7 years, but towards the tail end of his tenure, it was injury-riddled, and we never got the return that we expected to get when we signed him to that big deal. Not Joe's fault. Injuries happen, especially the fluky injuries that he had with the concussions and what have you. But now we get another guy with that kind of mindset that doesn't mind being on the island, that's cocky enough to play on the island, but still good enough to play in a scheme and play in a system. I love this pick.
Yeah, Dennis Maniloff, your reaction, I mean, it wasn't a name that at 4 a lot of people talked about. But I think we felt going into this draft that there was a lot of mutual interest for a lot of reasons for the Cleveland Browns and Denzel Ward.
Right, and most mocks I looked at, he was at least in the top 10, at the very least. So this is not, I don't think, a reach. If it's good enough for Steve, it's good enough for me. He knows the position. He knows how to battle corners. So that's a good pick, a good controversy-free pick by Dorsey after my eggs are still scrambled about the #1 overall and the dynamic and how that's going to fit. I'm still struggling with that.
Well, this does kind of slightly change a lot of the mock drafts that were out there. Now Bradley Chubb is there at 5.
Yes.
You know, he's a top 3 pick, and he's there at 5.
Now, if you're the Denver Broncos, you sit there and you go,
Von Miller.
Bradley Chubb right now.
There's a lot of quarterbacks in the AFC West going, please don't take Chubb. Of all people, please don't take Chubb.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, so now it's going to open up some possibilities. And again, there are still 2 quarterbacks out there. Now, if you're all of a sudden, if your team, like Buffalo, you sit there and you go, well, I don't have, maybe I can just sit tight. Maybe I don't have to make a drastic move because maybe one of these 2 quarterbacks are going to fall to me. And there's also a guy like Lamar Jackson, by the way, and I don't want to short cheat him because I think he's a guy that will certainly go here tonight.
Where it gets most interesting is Miami at 11. because they could be a wild card in terms of quarterbacks.
Yeah, I was thinking Lamar Jackson would have been a good fit here in Cleveland to learn under Tyrod Taylor. Now, obviously, we weren't going to use the number 104 pick on him, but if he would have fell late in the first round, we could use a second-round pick to trade back up.
Absolutely.
I thought we could have really used that type of talent on our team and be great. Tyrod Taylor would be a great mentor for Lamar Jackson.
Because I think, too, Jackson is humble enough to want to learn and know that he's not going to be an immediate starter.
Yeah.
I think that's the most important thing. Is it's okay to have cockiness and have an edge and be brash, but you also have to have humility to learn the position.
So are you saying that Baker Mayfield doesn't have humility?
From all that I've seen, Steve, humility is not on the skill set list.
Are you saying Baker Mayfield's not going to come in here and learn from Tyrod Taylor?
I think he's going to learn, but I think he is more the guy that wants to learn by doing rather than watching.
Yes. I agree.
And I think with other quarterbacks in this draft, they're going to learn by watching rather than doing. And I think that's a completely different mindset. And I'm still with you, man. I'm still a little scrambled.
It's the ongoing problem with Cleveland and our quarterbacks. 28 over the past, 17 years or so. And it's really tough because we continue to throw these guys in the fire, and they're not ready.
Right.
They're not ready to play.
Right.
And we ruined so many careers.
And it seemed like the plan that they had constructed, John Dorsey, Elliott Wolf, Alonzo Highsmith, and crew, that, okay, we're going to trade a third-round pick, which, I mean, the Browns were stockpiled with draft picks.
Yeah.
No problem.
That's still valuable.
Yeah,
That's
but still valuable. Yeah, but you
Yeah.
trade the third-round pick. Okay, fine. We're going to go get Tyrod Taylor, legitimate NFL starting quarterback. Fits the mold of what you're trying to do. He can start. He can win games. He can get this franchise rolling. He may be the quarterback of the future, but if he's not, you're grooming somebody with the help of Drew Stanton to eventually maybe take over in a couple of years. Well, you threw a giant monkey wrench into that plan tonight because Baker Mayfield, I just can't see him sitting back with Drew Stanton and saying, okay, well, we're just going to watch the whiteboard today or watch the film today. I mean, that's not this guy's DNA, D-man.
Stanton was the perfect babysitter for the project guy, for the franchise-type guy who was not going to be ready in 18, meaning not Josh Rosen or Baker Mayfield. Mm-hmm. Rosen or Mayfield, I think the expectation is they come in and they play right away. And that's what's so puzzling to me because they went and got, not only they get Taylor, they get Stanton to be the babysitter, so Taylor doesn't have to worry about that. He can focus, presumably, on the starting job. The question I want to have for all three of you guys, is it possible that Dorsey and his crew had locked onto Darnold or Allen and then backed off at the last second? We know about the Allen controversy.
Right.
Is it possible that Mayfield was the fallback plan?
We'll get to that in a second. The Denver Broncos, by the by, as we suspected, yeah, they took Bradley Chubb. And they wasted very little time in doing so. So now all of a sudden, you're going to have a problem. Instead of having a problem necessarily with the Cleveland Browns pass rush, you still will with Garrett and Ogba. But Bradley Chubb and Von Miller are coming at you for the opponents of the Denver Broncos.
If you're Derek Carr or another quarterback in the AFC West, if you're Phillip Rivers,
Pat Mahomes
for the Chiefs, thank you, Steve. I mean, you got to be looking at that going, whoa, okay. You better take your offensive tackles out for steak dinners every single night to thank them in advance for keeping your jersey clean.
And your tight ends better be good at chipping because they're going to be doing a lot of
running backs too,
and running backs to help out the quarterbacks. I want to get to
that's
your question.
That's a fantastic pick.
I think that's you talk the pick that makes the most sense.
I tell you what, the Colts didn't waste any time. Their picks already in too.
I think now things are kind of starting to fall into place for some teams that maybe weren't expecting things to fall into place.
You start to see some of these teams who have, really just great bones as an organization. Somebody like John Elway, he's not going to let a great player like Bradley Chubb past him, even though they need a quarterback. You see, they probably need a quarterback just as bad as we needed a quarterback, but or even more, but they took the best player available because they know what they're doing.
Now, here's interesting, and I'll see if our guys in the studio can pick this up. Myles Garrett tweeted 4 minutes ago, "Yes, sir," with a guy that looks kind of happy. I'm guessing, first thing, I think he's happy for Bradley Chubb. Do you think he's happy, though, that Bradley Chubb isn't necessarily competing with him for here in Cleveland?
I'm sure he is.
Well,
sure.
I think Agba would be the guy that would breathe a sigh of relief.
Yeah,
Garrett is going to get, he's going to be playing
which
regardless.
I agree with, but there had been talk that Garrett wasn't that happy. You know, there was reports Garrett wasn't happy with the Browns' interest in Chubb. I'm sorry, Bradley Chubb's I think he's going to be a terrific football player in the NFL.
He wouldn't take snaps from Garrett, though. So
No,
I didn't think Garrett had
they would be
anything to worry about.
perfect bookends to each other.
Yeah, there's the tweet you can see right there.
So I agree with D-Man. Agba is the guy that really breathes the sigh of relief, and actually even more so Carl Nassib. Because if you bring in a Chubb, you got to create a roster spot somewhere. And Agba likely wouldn't be going anywhere because he was the higher of the selections and has more of a proven track record in the NFL. So it was a very interesting pick. But I love the pick for Denver. I think Denver got themselves a hell of a pass rusher.
I think the two picks Barkley to the Giants, perfect for Eli Manning. Darnold to the Jets. I mean, Darnold's mentor is going to be Josh McCown.
Great.
I mean, that's
perfect.
Mentor.
Yep.
That's perfect for him. And then you've got the option 3, Bradley Chubb going to the Denver Broncos to play alongside Von Miller. I mean, Indianapolis Colts are about to make a pick. Looks like they may go offensive line here in their situation as they're trying to protect Andrew Luck, hoping he comes back. Quentin Nelson staying in state.
Yep, keeping it
the
in
guard
the fam.
from Notre Dame is the newest member of the Colts. That's the pick that Indianapolis got from the Jets to move up a couple of spots. So the Jets ended up getting Darnold, and the Colts go down a couple spots and get Quentin Nelson.
It's a great pick. I think you got to protect your franchise quarterback. He's obviously not been protected over the past few years and had some injuries. So I think this guy's ready to go in and start right away. He's a beast. He's a monster. I mean,
look at 329 pounds.
Yeah.
I mean, he is not. If you're trying to rebuild your offensive line,
That's a good building block.
that's a good building block.
Well, the thing that's most impressive about him, too, is if you listen to all the pre-draft analysis of it, the one thing that stands out to most people over everything, he's got a mean streak about him. He finishes plays. He plays to the whistle, maybe a little bit beyond it sometimes, but he's not afraid to knock somebody on their rear end and protect the quarterback. And with Andrew Luck's health being a major, major concern, this is a perfect pick for the Colts.
Yeah, I mean, Frank Reich going, for offense. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. To
Guys making picks that make sense.
Right.
Well,
Wow.
And you want to build that trust. Andrew Luck needs to know that you're invested in his success, and this pick shows that. I mean, organizations realize that that's important to build a team environment.
And we're about to have, apparently, our first trade of the NFL draft. It looks like Buffalo is going to move up. They have the 12th overall pick. It looks like they're going to execute a trade with Tampa Bay to go from 12 to 7. And presumably, that would get the Bills a young quarterback to pair along with A.J. McCarron and start their process going forward, either Josh Allen or Josh Rosen. Allen seems like he would make the most sense for Buffalo. Big, strong-arm quarterback, big guy to play in the cold.
But there's that controversy that's hanging over his head. It blew up in the last 36 to 24 hours, and then all you saw today was him apologizing. He calls Stephen A. Smith.
Yes.
At 2 in the morning, Smith said. He's talking to Susie Kalber on the red carpet, almost teary-eyed, like, I apologize. That's not me, that's not me. The question is, how much of a price is he going to pay? If the Bills don't take him here, then who does?
Yeah, he could fall to Miami.
If he doesn't go to
Arizona.
If he doesn't go to Buffalo, Arizona or Miami.
Well, but even look at Buffalo. Buffalo trading up for a quarterback. They're pretty much in the same situation as the Cleveland Browns. You just signed a free agent guy who wants to play, who wants to be the guy, and if you draft Rosen, who's another guy who's ready to go in, now you got another quarterback controversy. I mean, how many times are these organizations going to continue to have the same thing happen over and over again?
It's a great point.
I'm just interested how you sell this to a fan base, that you traded away a guy that led you to the playoffs, and now you're bringing in a guy that's allegedly full of controversy from something he put on social media multiple years ago.
Or if it's Rosen, injury prone / there is a question of his desire of how, you know, how much of a football, you know, does he want to be an NFL player? So Jim Donovan and I were just talking about it the other day. That was the knock on Justin Gilbert. We, you know, desire to excel at the next level. There's been talk about that with Josh Rosen,
and
fairly or unfairly.
Yeah, Josh Rosen doesn't bite his tongue either. I mean, he's had some controversial tweets and some things he's put on social media too as well, and things he's just said outright. So, you know, both of these guys who are still left on the board potentially could have some controversy around them.
Yeah, no question about that. This is an interesting time for Bills fans. You know, they come off such an emotional high, getting back to the playoffs, finally getting over the hump, and then all of a sudden they destroy their quarterback room and try to rebuild it with a first-round pick of two guys who, realistically, one has a 56% completion percentage, and while the other is the prettiest thrower in the league, he played in very good conditions in UCLA versus next to a giant lake where it blizzards half the year in Buffalo.
Yeah, because they're not moving up, D-Man, they're not moving up 12-7 to take Lamar Jackson. I mean, he'd be there at 12, I would think.
Right.
I mean, it's going to be one of the Joshes.
Exactly. They identified one of those two, and you know, my gut tells me they'll look past Allen's controversy, say it was far enough in his past, he's apologetic enough. I do know this, if they get Josh Allen, they're going to get the most apologetic, most well-mannered human, because he's not going to want to misstep in the slightest. So they're going to get a super citizen here who's not going to speak his mind because he realizes he's on thin ice as it is.
Yeah.
So the pick is in for Buffalo. This is going to be very, very interesting. I'm also curious to see what if it was what they gave up to move up 5 spots, if they had to part with both that 22nd overall pick as well, or maybe a future pick. I'll be curious to see what the exact stakes are. But we expect a third quarterback of this first round to be taken.
How about this? In our ear, our producer Vince Fradiani gave us the heads up that the Bills actually inquired about the number 4 pick. Well, and the asking price was too high.
Okay.
So this is interesting. I wonder if Buffalo's going to hold on to 22, or if they'll give up 22 but still hold on to next year's first.
And here's interesting. Reportedly, there was a deal for Buffalo to go from 12 to 5 with Denver, but lo and behold, when the Browns took Ward instead of Bradley Chubb, John Elway said, "No, thanks."
Von Miller got on the phone with Elway and said, "Give me Chubb."
I'm going to take Chubb.
So this is, again, our first trade of the night. The Buffalo Bills going from 12 to 7, and we suspect a quarterback is about to be taken for Buffalo. Which one will it be? It looks like it's going to be Josh Allen. And it is going to be Wyoming quarterback Josh Allen. And looking at their fans in Dallas anyway, they seem pretty excited about that pick.
That noise you hear is the exhale from Josh Allen. Oh, thank God I didn't drop any farm rights.
I didn't lose too much money, you know, for what happened.
He did not have a long wait at all.
He should be very thankful that he got grabbed when he did.
Yeah.
That could have been a free fall.
Well, you saw the tail of the tape on Allen. As far as size is concerned, there's nobody close to him in this draft as a quarterback. 6'5", 233 pounds. Now, you guys want to hear the comparisons? Now,
no.
I really don't.
The high,
I don't.
The high, Ben Roethlisberger.
Yep.
The low, Kyle Bowler or Jake Locker.
Ouch.
Yes.
Wow, that's the most spectrum, isn't it?
I mean, every quarterback prospect has a low, though.
Right.
The low for Mayfield would be Johnny Manziel.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Or something to that effect. So, I don't worry about the low. I worry about the comp with Roethlisberger is the one that makes me cringe.
There's a lot of upside with this young man. I think if he, gets some good coaching, get in a good quarterback room where he can learn. Problem is that he's not going to learn a lot from A.J. McCarron, because A.J. McCarron is going to be focused on playing, and he doesn't want to teach some young guy the ropes. He's been sitting behind and waiting for his turn for the past 4 years. So now he's ready to play, ready to focus. Who's going to groom Allen?
Yeah, that's why I thought the Browns had this so well thought out, the way their plan goes. As far as Allen is concerned, the red flags are his accuracy. Only 50, Matt mentioned a moment ago, only about 56% completion percentage. Through in 2016, 28 touchdowns, 15 picks. He's a good runner, 523 yards and 7 touchdowns in 2016. Then last year, Wyoming didn't throw the ball nearly as much. 1,800 yards passing, 16 touchdowns, 6 picks. But it's that accuracy, it's the decision making that a lot of scouts were questioning whether or not, from that, again, like Carson Wentz, from that small school, that non-BCS school, can he make the jump?
Let's be honest, Carson Wentz's success with the Philadelphia Eagles is the reason why Josh Allen is a top 10 pick. Everybody saw what Carson Wentz could do and how seamless he made the transition. Similar build, similar background. People are going to take a shot on this kid because they've seen it work. The
arm strength, Steve Sanders, is absolutely off the charts with him. And the other thing they say with him, he's hard to sack because of his build. I mean, he's not an easy guy for a defensive lineman or an edge rusher to bring down, let alone, if you're bringing a safety or whatever. He can shake off of guys and use his mobility to keep things alive.
Yeah. How long is he going to stay on the bench is my question. In Buffalo, A.J. McCarron, how long of a leash does he have?
Right.
Because they're going to be calling for this young man to play at some point in time. Hopefully they let him sit. But again, back to my original question, who's going to groom him and who's he going to learn from? Because he's a raw talent. He needs a lot of grooming, a lot of coaching.
All right, let's kind of reset here as we head towards the 9 o'clock hour. We're an hour in to the 2018 NFL Draft. I got to first say, I know Dennis has got to run. D-Man, I thank you very much for stopping by. You can follow him at D-Man's World 474 on Twitter, and you can also read him at cleveland.com. It's a great read. I would imagine you'll be spending a lot of time charting throws in summer and into the fall.
Well, thank you for having me on with such an esteemed panel. I promise I won't be charting training camp throws or mini camp throws, even though everybody else will. Oh, Baker just completed 10 in a row. He's got to be a star.
He's got a leg up in the competition.
Yeah, it's like, why did you have to bring that? But again, I said that Dorsey knows more than we do. So I guess I have to believe that for the next 10 more minutes, I guess. But thanks for having me on, guys.
It is great to stop by. If you're just joining us, the Cleveland Browns with the first overall pick, a big surprise, took Baker Mayfield, the quarterback from Oklahoma, Heisman Trophy winner, a player that really until the last 48 hours had not really been linked to the Cleveland Browns. He is now the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns in terms of the first-round pick, and we suspect he'll be competing for the starting spot sooner rather than later. Bit of a surprise, but a pleasant surprise with the fourth overall pick. The Cleveland Browns getting that pick thanks to a trade last year with Houston. They took the local boy, Denzel Ward, from Nordonia High School in Ohio State, a cornerback considered the best cornerback in this year's draft. So that's kind of what has happened so far. I'd love to hear what people out there think about it. So to do that, let's check in once again at the tag board with Stephanie Metzger up at the touchscreen. Steph, what have fans been saying here now that Baker Mayfield and Denzel Ward are coming to Cleveland?
Well, Dino, you mentioned that fans were surprised by the pick at number 4 with Denzel Ward. I think surprise is kind of the sentiment overall here. Let's take a look at some of these tweets and Facebook comments that we saw here. Rhonda here kept it pretty simple, stunned with both picks. Scott here simply said no with several exclamation points. He says Baker Mayfield is Manziel Part 2, which I think we've seen and heard quite a bit from some fans. Hipster Tito over on Twitter said, good news though, Browns have a great track record with Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks born in Texas. We won't mention a former one. Drew here says, see you in the top of the draft next year. Unreal. He's also unhappy about this. The guys over at GV Artwork and Apparel, well, Dorsey definitely doesn't care what people think. 2 picks no one saw coming. Let's pray we don't look back years from now and literally bang our heads on a wall because of passing on Barkley, Darnold, and Chubb. Trying to be optimistic here, but only time will tell. Let's see. Mike here says, wasted picks. Darnold and Chubb was plated up for the Browns, and they blew it. And finally, let's take a look at this jersey here. At least those Manziel jerseys didn't completely go to waste. Guys, back to you.
Wow. Look at that.
I need to take a picture.
That is priceless right there.
I mean, you know, only in Cleveland, really? I mean, that's OIC right there.
You know, Dino, what struck me about one of those tweets was we talk about all the guys we passed up on. I'm not going to compare it to 2014 when they drafted Manziel and Gilbert, who were a quarterback and a cornerback, and we passed up on a lot of other good talent there. But I hope that tweet is wrong. But I'm kind of leaning that way, that in a couple of years we may look back and go, we passed on Darnold, on Chubb, on Barkley, and we may be kicking ourselves right in the backside.
I spent time writing about that the other day. Now, while we were with Steph, the Chicago Bears made a really good pick. I love this young man. Roquan Smith out of Georgia. If you maybe didn't get a chance to really watch him until the college football playoff, Steve, he's something else. He is an absolute guy that can lead your defense. I mean, you think about, like, you know, the Chicago Bears with Mike Singletary, Brian Urlacher, the next Dick Butkus, the next generation of great Chicago Bear linebacker. I think this young man fits that to a T.
I think he's a perfect fit for Chicago. I mean, bad weather place, he's going to go out there and he's going to be an absolute animal on the defensive side. I love his energy. I love his skill set. But I also love his swag. You know, when you watch them play in a national championship, this kid can play, and his talent is going to translate well to the NFL.
He's very much a follow-me guy. He's going to set the example, not by saying it, but by doing it. You look at the college football playoff, he was all over the field, especially in the second half of the Oklahoma game where, let's face it, Georgia was getting their doors blown off for a while there. And then all of a sudden, the second half, they really ramped things up, and it was because of the play of the defense that they were able to get back into the game and at least give guys like Sony Michel and Nick Chubb chances to make plays to get them to the national championship game. I'll never forget the one hit he laid against Oklahoma where he seemingly came out of nowhere and flattened the ball carrier.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable, and it was in overtime, and it was at a critical juncture where a first down likely could have set Oklahoma up to win the game.
It was like he had more energy than anybody else on the field. This has been a night of surprises. How about another one already now? Usually, just take people behind the curtain. Usually, teams in the NFL will wait until after the first round before the decision makers, the guys, come downstairs from the, quote, war room to address the media. John Dorsey and Hugh Jackson are talking to the media right now. Dorsey, a quote, I'm just seeing on Twitter, "We got two quality players. Mayfield wins the game of football. Revered by his teammates, I couldn't be happier." This is again a quote from John Dorsey. "I couldn't be happier with the acquisition of these two football players."
He wins in college. It's a lot different when he's facing grown men that know what they're doing defensively. It's going to be a rough sell early on. I think.
What he's not taking into consideration is the dynamic of your locker room. You can't win the entire locker room when half of the locker room wants Tyrod Taylor, you know, or 3/4 of the room wants Tyrod Taylor, and they thought that he was going to be the guy. You bring now Mayfield in, you really put him at a disadvantage because most of the guys in the locker room are going to look like you're just a rookie, and they're going to throw you in there just because you're the #1 overall pick. You're not going to earn it. So really, he's going to have to come in there and win over that locker room, really from a disadvantaged point.
To Steve's point, and it's a fantastic point, there's going to be a lot of animosity toward him based off of where he was chosen. And regardless of if he outplays Tyrod or not, he's got a lot of questions to answer. And he's going to have to be a man about it. He has to accept the criticism, whether it's fair or not. He has to keep his mouth shut, and he has to handle his business on the field, because it's not going to work if you go in there all bluff and bluster and you say all the right things and you win the press conferences, and in practice, if you pull a Manziel and you can't complete 40% of your throws when you've just been named the starter, you got problems.
Yeah, and here's an issue with the Browns. Because of all the roster turnaround over the last years. Sashi Brown, basically cleaning house and bringing in new players, and now all of a sudden John Dorsey with trades, free agency, now the draft this weekend, bringing in new players. Joe Thomas is retired. Who's the locker room leaders of this football team? I don't know.
Honestly, right now in the offseason, it seems like it's Landry.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
He's brought the guys together. He has them out training, but even he has to question where he stands, because now if you do go with the rookie quarterback with the learning curve and who's undersized, where does that put his position as a wide receiver? Is he going to get those 100 catches he's been getting over the past 4 years? I don't know. And so you start to question as a wide receiver, who's going to be the guy, and how does that affect my ability to make plays on the field?
Well, while we were debating and discussing the quarterbacks, so we had another offensive lineman from the University of Notre Dame come off the board. Left tackle Mike McGlinchey will go to the San Francisco 49ers. I think this is actually the first pick I mocked correctly. I had this mocked up because with the signing of Jimmy Garoppolo to the money that they gave him, they needed to provide a blindside blocker, and this guy fits that bill.
Wait, is that's
the weight
correct,
was
right?
the weight was
I believe that's 313 pounds.
But
yeah,
he very much, and I know people are going to jump on me for this, but I'm going to say it anyway. From a size and build standpoint, very much in the mold of Joe Thomas. He's not a heavy tackle. He's an athletic tackle. He's got the height. He knows how to use his technique. And that's, I think, what is going to be most important. He's not going to be a big road grader in terms of, he's not a guard. He doesn't have to be. He's a guy that has to watch out for that blind side, and he's going to use hand placement, foot placement, and arm length to be able to provide Garoppolo with the adequate protection that he's going to need.
Offensive linemen love playing for Kyle Shanahan. That goes back to when Joe Thomas was here with Shanahan, Alex Mack, who followed down to Atlanta before Shanahan went to San Francisco, because they love blocking in that zone system.
Really goes back to his father.
Oh, yeah,
Mike
absolutely.
Shanahan.
Sure.
Absolutely. Offensive linemen love the zone blocking scheme.
Yeah.
And they have a daggum lot of success in it, too. And Mike McGlinchey is the perfect pick for the 49ers at this point.
I believe we've just had our second trade.
The Cardinals are going to get Josh Rosen.
Yeah, the Cardinals look like they're moving up from 15 to 10 with the idea of getting Josh Rosen, who I would think they thought, well, he's not going to be there. He won't be there. So, yeah, I think they've decided to go ahead and move up a couple of spots and get them. While we wait for the pick, just a couple more thoughts, and we'll hear more from Stephanie Metzger. She's going to be watching some of this, the press conference from Berea. When asked about Baker Mayfield's height, GM John Dorsey, quick to point out he had the fewest number of batted balls down at the line of scrimmage in college football. Let's see.
How many times did he throw from the pocket, though?
Not that many.
Yeah,
I mean,
see, that's the thing you got to weigh.
Again, you're in the
spread.
spread.
You can say, oh, he doesn't have a lot of batted balls, but he's not going to be able to extend the pocket every single time it breaks down. He has to play within the pocket, and that's where you're going to see a lot of batted balls. Look, Brandon Weeden was 5 inches taller than Baker Mayfield, and he couldn't throw over a defensive lineman to save his life. What is Baker Mayfield going to do when he's 6'1" and he's got to change his launch angle? It changes the distance on his throws. He's not going to be able to stay in the pocket, but he's also not going to be able to rely on his athleticism to extend every single play when it breaks down.
Dorsey says, quote, "We had unanimous consent in our organization on Baker Mayfield. He was the best fit for this organization," blah, blah, blah. And what separated Mayfield from Darnold, Allen, Rosen, etc., hand size was a factor, feet to extend the play, quick release, he's hungry, he wants to be a really good football player. Well, I would assume Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, and Josh Rosen.
And I want to be the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, too.
Right.
But that doesn't mean it's going to happen. I mean, come on. The drafting on potential really irks me, especially from the quarterback
Dorsey
position.
keeps saying he's the best. Mayfield was the best quarterback in this draft. He stands by it. It's not a gamble.
You know what?
That's
Good
what
for
the GM
him
is saying.
if he really stands behind it. But in 2 years' time, if we're picking again with the #1 overall pick, he's not making that choice.
At this point, I'm saying, how about those calves? Let's see that shot last night with LeBron.
Oh, that was a
amazing.
beautiful thing.
We have nothing to talk about here right now.
Oh, man. Oh, that was well played. Hashtag well played.
Dynamite drop in, Steve Sanders, if you need him. As we Arizona again has moved up from 15 to 10. They've running the clock down. They're about at 2 minutes to go. While at the same time, the Browns general manager and head coach are addressing the media and trying to sell the media on the virtues of taking Baker Mayfield and Denzel Ward.
That's going to be a tough sell.
That's you talk about I mean, John Dorsey's had his introductory press conference. He had a press conference around the time of the trades and free agency, and then last week he had his pre-draft press conference. If he thought pretty much she got, it was a honeymoon, bouquets and were thrown, softballs were tossed, that went out the window. I mean, I'm quite sure he's getting tough questions in there.
Well, I'm sure he's getting tough questions in there, and if they were watching the same feed that we were about the draft party and how it was going, I'm sure the after-action reports of the draft party are not going to be very pleasant to go over in the marketing department on Monday morning.
Yeah, I mean, again, Steve, it's. I understand you have to have the courage of your convictions, and you have to be able to say, look, this is the guy we want, and all of that. But at some point, I mean, if you're an executive and you're just trying to sit there and you say, okay, what's the best fit, not just on the field, but overall for the organization to be, you're drafting the person first overall. He's going to be the face of the franchise at some point. And then you think about Mayfield, it just doesn't compute all the way.
Yeah, you know what? You really set your franchise back when you miss so many times on these first-round picks. I mean, if you miss 1 year on these first-round picks, it can set you back. We've missed since 2014. I mean, we've really missed, and it's been bad. It hasn't been just like maybe, small miss. It's been big misses. It's been whiffs, and I'm baffled right now.
I mean, how about this, Steve? To your point, the last since 2010, all the draft picks that they've had, multiple years with multiple first-round selections. The only 3 players or 4 players they have are the 3 from last year and Corey Coleman from 2016.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep.
They've missed on everybody else.
They've missed, yeah. I mean, these guys are not even on the team anymore.
No. Some of them aren't even in the NFL. Justin Gilbert, Johnny Manziel, Phil Taylor. Some of these guys aren't even playing in the league. I mean, good Lord.
Now, for the cost of a 3rd-round pick and a 5th-round pick, and then swapping 10 and 15, the Arizona Cardinals move up and get quarterback Josh Rosen, who arguably might be the best quarterback in the draft. So, though some said, in terms of his abilities, Matt, his tools, off the charts. I mean, a lot of people really, fundamentals, footwork, et cetera, a lot of people gave him very high grades.
He graded out extremely well. The questions for him were not of a football variety. They were of a health standpoint and of a free thinking standpoint. He's not afraid to say what's on his mind. He's not afraid to let his opinions be known. He also is dealing with a history of concussions now. Mm-hmm. So those were 2 very, very important things that you had to evaluate in your pre-draft analysis of the quarterback class. And for the top 9 teams that had a chance, or however many of those teams needed quarterback, which was quite a few of them, it was too much to take a chance on Rosen.
Well, Josh Rosen has to be a pretty happy guy right now because he fell in the perfect scenario situation for him.
Sure.
He's going to be playing in the Dome half the year out in Arizona. He's a nice weather place similar to where he went to college at and where he's from. He didn't go to the Jets, who has had so much controversy over the past several years for a quarterback. He didn't go to the Browns in a cold weather place with so much controversy. He didn't go to the Bills, cold place with so much controversy. He went to a place where he can really thrive, and I think Bruce Arians, right, is out there. Is Bruce Arians still there?
Or did he retire?
No, I think he retired.
He just retired. I forgot.
He retired.
Yeah. So, but they just Steve Wilkes actually.
That's right.
A guy who coached me at Bowling Green. I should know that. So Coach Wilkes.
We'll give you a pass, Steve. You're still. We're all still a little bit broken up about the number one.
Yeah,
pick.
I know. We're still on Mayfield. Just kind of shock. Yeah, yeah. Hugh Jackson just said he's an outlier that's really good. Okay. Whatever.
Malcolm Gladwell. I mean, what is this?
I don't.
I had such high hopes for this team going forward with Tyrod Taylor in the mix. I really, I don't like to say guys win the press conference, but when you listen to Taylor and to Landry, the first thing that stood out, infectious smiles and genuine excitement to be on a team that just went 0-16 and they're 1-31, and they were still smiling at the press conference after being traded there. And now all of a sudden, all that goes, and the air comes out of the balloon.
I don't know about you guys, but it feels like deja vu. Last year we were sitting here around this same time, very disappointed. The Browns were trading out of the pick number 12, and there goes Deshaun Watson. And, I mean,
and Malik Hooker,
two things the Browns have done tonight that I do like. I like the Ward. I don't hate the Ward pick. I like the Ward pick, and I like the fact that they didn't trade down to do it.
Right.
That's great. The quarterback thing is another situation.
That's just a hard speed bump to get over.
I realize Dorsey and Jackson, I think they're wrapping up or might still be talking.
They're going to be talking for a minute.
Yeah, I was going to say, the media is not going to
questions.
let them go. But I do wonder if a player that's on their board is still there, maybe 18 with Seattle, maybe 22, if they don't move back into the first round. Maybe look at for that offensive lineman, a potential future guy to replace Joe. Nobody's going to replace Joe Thomas, but you know what I mean.
Or
somebody
Connor Williams, Orlando Brown Jr. type.
Somebody like that.
Somebody that slipped because of a combine performance. Sorry, Orlando Jr. It wasn't the best combine, but you're still a hell of a blocker.
With 3 second-round picks, I think that's a really good chance that we do move it back into the first round. I look at I'm all about playmakers, man. We need playmakers. Players make plays, man. And look at Sony Michel. Another running back who's there, who could be there in the 20s, who could be there in the late teens. So you could get a guy like Sony Michel who's made plays on the biggest stage, and I think we need a playmaker.
Well, and there are no shortage. That's one thing. There are no shortage of and I never got a chance to ask you because the Mayfield thing I think took us by surprise. But how big of a gap is there in your mind between Barkley and that next tier of running backs, the Nick Chubb and the
Darius Geis?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. How big of a gap is there?
I think there's a pretty sizable gap between, but the closest, in my opinion, would be Sony Michel because he shows that electrifying speed, size, power, and strength, and he's a 3-down back. So, I think he's somewhat comparable. He's not going to be Barkley, but I think he's going to have success in this league at the next level. I don't see Nick Chubb. He doesn't have the breakaway speed. It's going to be tough for him to go into the NFL and to see the same success he had in college. And the same thing with Geis. I don't think Geis is going to be very successful. I think he's actually going to fall probably to the second or third round. I don't think he's going to go in the first.
As we now get into the second 10 here of the NFL draft, at pick number 11, the Miami Dolphins, who we thought might look at moving up for a quarterback. They're apparently going to stick with Ryan Tannehill for now. They get who some thought was the best defensive player in the draft in defensive back, Minkah Fitzpatrick. You see there he's listed as a free safety. He can play cornerback. The bottom line, Matt, is that for a guy from Nick Saban's secondary, he's a playmaker.
No question about it. We were talking before we went on air that we had seen some mocks where he could be there for the Packers.
Yes.
And the comparison that we thought of was, man, given the right type of coaching, he could have a Charles Woodson-like effect. I'm not saying he will be.
Where you could play, he could play either position extremely well.
But Charles Woodson was one of those rare athletes that could do just about anything. I mean, he even it was even said by Dom Capers, I believe, his former defensive coordinator, look, if we needed a defensive end, he could have done it.
Right.
Minka Fitzpatrick, probably not to that extent, but he's all over the secondary. He can play in the slot as a corner. He can play on the outside as a cover corner. He's best probably at the safety level. But no matter what, he's able to get in the backfield and make plays if they blitz him, and he's able to drop back into coverage and make plays if they choose to keep him in pass coverage. It's the best of both worlds, and Miami's getting a playmaker in their secondary.
I'm all about playmakers, and this guy makes plays. I mean, I could have seen the scenario where we could have took him at 4, and I would have been happy with it.
Absolutely.
I love the comparison to Charles Woodson. I think he's going to be all over the field. He's going to have great success at the next level. And you're going to see him play corner. You're going to see him play safety. You're going to see him play rover. He's going to be in the box. He's going to blitz. He's going to be a really good playmaker for the Dolphins.
I'm interested to know why his stock fell. He was rumored to be the number 4 pick.
I wonder if he was, people thought he was like a man without a position because, I mean, and Dorsey was talking about this at the press conference just a little bit ago in Berea, that one of the things that made Denzel Ward so attractive to the Browns to take him at 4 was the fact that he's a true shutdown cornerback, put him on the island and just let him go. Fitzpatrick is just a different kind of player. But I don't think it matters. I mean, he's still going to make plays, and I think he's going to be in a good spot in Miami.
A player like Fitzpatrick needs to be in a system that will allow him to be successful. And if you don't have that type of system, or if you don't have the mindset as a general manager or as a defensive coordinator to have a player like that, it's not going to work. So it's great that he's going to a situation and scenario where he can be himself and not try to make him be something that he's not.
But yeah, if you look at all the players that have dropped to this point, you just saw the graphic. I mean, his going from down to 12 is, or to 11, I'm sorry, is probably one of the biggest surprises to this point. I don't think anybody else has fallen that hasn't been taken that is shocking to this point. Now that Rosen's off the board as well, I mean, I think now it's almost chalk at this point.
Yeah, now all the mock drafts are pretty much just out the window. I mean, everything's changing now because so many things happened, and with the quarterbacks runs going early, it was extended a little bit longer than I think we thought, but it still allowed some really talented players to slip in this draft.
Yeah.
And that's going to be good for teams like the Packers, like Washington, like the like the Raiders, who traded with the Cardinals to drop to 15. They're going to get quality players at these mid-round picks. And it's going to be very interesting how the rest of this round plays out. I can't wait to see who comes off the board next.
Just got reminded, former Browns GM Phil Savage was tweeting, Arizona's got 3 quarterbacks in their QB room now, Sam Bradford, Mike Glennon, and Josh Rosen. How's that mix going to work? That's an interesting mix. You've got 2 veterans who I'm quite sure think they still can play, and then you've got a rookie who many thought is the most NFL-ready quarterback of all the QBs in this year's draft. That's going to be an interesting dynamic to figure out.
Well, Bradford has some health issues.
A lot of health issues, yeah.
And I think that Rosen can beat out Glennon, and Glennon may be the odd man out. I mean, he may want out after that draft pick and say, you know what, there's no way I'm going to beat out Bradford, and this young guy's probably going to come in and win the position.
Well, they've just wrapped up, exactly. They've just wrapped up the press conference in Berea. General Manager John Dorsey and head coach Hugh Jackson addressed the media. Stephanie Metzger was paying close attention to what Mr. Dorsey and Jackson had to say. And Steph, what stood out to you the most?
All right, Dino. So obviously reporters had a lot of questions for Dorsey regarding this first overall pick on Mayfield. And I want to start with something that Coach Hugh Jackson said. He reiterated that Tyrod Taylor is the starting quarterback going into this season. He was sure to note that. Now, Hugh Jackson went on to say that digging into everything about Baker, he says that the organization just felt comfortable with him. He says the guy is a leader of men, and he'll get his team to the next level. Now, moving on to what Dorsey had to say about Mayfield, he said, I just felt this was the best for the organization looking forward. Now, there had been some reports that came out earlier today, before this draft started, saying that Dorsey's known who he was going to pick for about 6 weeks now. Now, tonight, Dorsey said that he wanted the organization to have unanimous consent when it came to this first overall pick. And he said that there was a unanimous understanding of who they'd take around Monday or Tuesday. Now, why Baker Mayfield? Dorsey said it was a combination of things. He was very quick to note Mayfield's hand size. He's got those 9 6/8 hands. He has big feet to extend the play. He has accuracy, quick release, and a strong arm. And Dorsey said when it comes to stats, Mayfield tends to usually rank, 1 or 2 among quarterbacks. Now, when it comes to some of Mayfield's maybe off the field issues, you might remember video of his arrest. Dorsey said that he noted that they vetted Baker Mayfield so thoroughly that Dorsey says he could tell you what Baker Mayfield ordered from a food truck the night of his arrest. And he went on to say, have you ever been 19 or 20 before? He said, my faith says guys deserve a second chance, and we all learn from our mistakes. He thinks that Baker Mayfield is now a mature young man. Finally, Dorsey just said he believes that Baker Mayfield is hungry and he wants to be a really good football player, and he's going to be a really good football player. Now, just to wrap things up over here, I just want to remind you to head over to WKYC.com, where we've got even more draft coverage for you. As you can see, we have all kinds of stories, and we even have a live running update with pick by pick. Guys, back to you.
Well, if Baker Mayfield's hungry, we at least know that he knows where to find the food truck, right?
I would guess he was going for tacos, right?
Right, exactly right. Steph, great job. Thank you for monitoring, and we'll come back to you here in a little bit to see what fans are saying as we continue. Wow.
We all have been 19 or 20, and
I
we've
don't
all
disagree with that.
made decisions that we regret.
I don't disagree with that at all.
We've all made decisions we regret. How many have ended up with knights and silver bracelets?
Well, how about the story for Baker Mayfield? I won't beat the guy up too much. I mean, the guy goes from being a walk-on to twice and wins a starting job. He beats out a pretty good player in Oklahoma in Knight, and then he goes on to win Heisman and puts his team in some pretty good positions to have double-digit wins back-to-back years. So, it's a really great story if you really think about it. I mean, now he's a #1 pick. Now he has to play. He has to have some success in the league. But I think it's somewhat of a feel-good story, not for Browns and for the fans of Cleveland, but for Baker Mayfield and for his family. I think it's a good story.
I think it's a tremendous story. I think it would have been a great story in New York for the Jets. I think it would have been a great story for him. I don't necessarily, because again, it's more about, to me, fit with where this franchise is, who's already on the roster, and more so than a lot of the other stuff that we brought up. It's the fact that you've got a starting quarterback here, and I am pleased Hugh Jackson verified that Taylor's going to be the starter. But of course he's going to say that now, Steve, right?
Yeah, he has to say that to save face. I mean, I'm sure at some point in time there's going to be a conversation with Tyrod Taylor and the coaching staff and general manager. I wouldn't be surprised if there was some furniture moving and somebody was on the way out. I guarantee you Tyrod Taylor is not happy about that draft pick, and he wants to be the guy without question when he came here.
Do you buy, Matt, that this is unanimous? And I'm talking McClown, Highsmith, Wolf, Dorsey, Hugh Jackson, Todd Haley, coaching staff, unanimous. Best player for the Cleveland Browns, Baker Mayfield.
Not a chance.
No.
I don't believe that at all.
Yeah.
You with the amount of egos and football acumen in that building, there's no way that was a consensus among 20 decision makers and an ownership group. It just, that does not seem right to me at all. He has to say that. I understand that it has to be said.
I almost would rather him say, you know what, we had some spirited arguments about the right, but at the end of the day, you know what, we came to a decision and this is it. I mean, instead of sounding like it was,
This was a John Dorsey top lieutenant's move.
Yeah.
He and his top lieutenants made this pick. because there's no way that Todd Haley comes here and is going to have to revamp his entire offense to fit the skill set of one player when you've got 10 other guys that you have to worry about. And, oh, by the way, you're already having to revamp stuff to fit what Tyrod Taylor gives you and to best take advantage of his skill set. There was no consensus on that. I don't care what anybody says out of Berea. This was not agreed upon by all parties.
Not buying it at all.
No.
Next question.
Next question. While we were away, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, remember, they had the 7th pick. They moved down with Buffalo to 12. And, you know, in the tradition of guys like Warren Sapp, Leroy Selman, they get a defensive tackle out of Washington, Vita Vea.
And Vita Vea is a strong...
Is it Vita Vea? Vita Vea? Not Vita Vea. Vita Vea.
Well, yeah, the Vegemin commercial from the I Love Lucy shows.
He is huge. I mean,
he's a strong man.
He looks like a guy that would, you know, when I saw him walking up the stage, like, reminds me of Danny Shelton in a little bit, just from his heritage and everything, but his size, 6'4", 347 pounds, and, you know, a guy that could get in there and stuff that running game.
I think he had the second most reps on the bench at the Combine. He is a powerhouse of a human, and he's going to be a perfect fit in the defensive tackle spot for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah,
they got a great
He reminds
player.
me of a Haloti Ngata, who played for the Ravens for some time. But I think Haloti Ngata, if he can have the success Haloti Ngata had, he's going to be a problem. I mean, they already have a beast on the defensive line there in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, say ponder this defensive line. We talked about Denver, and they've got obviously now Chubb to go with Miller. Here's Tampa Bay's defensive line as we're going to head back to Berea here in a second. Hear from Jim Donovan, Jason Pierre-Paul. Remember the Giants let him go, and they got him from New York. Mm-hmm. Gerald McCoy. They've got Noah Spence, Bo Allen, and Vinny Curry.
Yeah.
That's nice.
That is nice.
You know, at the Combine, it was addressed by Dirk Cutter that one of the things they had to do was find a way to close the gap with the teams that they played against. And 3 out of the 4 teams in their division made the playoffs. So they got both wild card spots and their division champion win as well. They have to close the gap. Yeah. Tampa Bay does. They have their quarterback. They have pieces around him that can make plays. And maybe they need a little bit more around him to get to that next level offensively. But building a solid, stout defensive line does nothing but help that unit going forward. This was a good pick for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Very, very sensible pick. Okay, let's head back down to Browns headquarters in Berea on 76 Lou Groves Way. The voice of the Browns, Jim Donovan, is there after checking out the press conference with John Dorsey and Hugh Jackson on the heels of the Browns drafting Baker Mayfield and Denzel Ward. Jimmy, as you were sitting there in the press room, what stood out to you the most from Dorsey and Jackson?
Well, that I think, Dino, that it really became a sell job, I think, by John Dorsey with Hugh Jackson sitting side by side with him. But I think they had to anticipate it, and I think that they, executed it, and that was that they had to sell Baker Mayfield and why they chose him at number 1, which is really a unique position to be in when you have the top pick in the draft, because normally it's a slam dunk. I mean, Myles Garrett, I think last year, was a bit of a slam dunk. Jared Goff was a slam dunk. And you can go on down the road of number 1 overall picks, and typically a guy rises above everybody else. Now, this was different, and that's no fault of Baker Mayfield. But because there were so many quarterbacks, and a lot of them had them in an even pack of 1, 2, 3, 4, and not much between number 4 and number 1, I think that John Dorsey had to come down and say, listen, this is why I took this guy. But I think the overriding theme on John Dorsey's love of Baker Mayfield, and to the point where he took him number 1 overall in the draft, was this. He's a winner. And he feels he can win, and he can win at the NFL level. He loves the fire that he has. He loves the way that he attacks every level that he plays at, whether it was at high school, whether it was at college in 2 different stops, Texas Tech and then Oklahoma. He plays with a big chip on his shoulder, but in the end, he wins. And if you go back a week ago, when Dorsey was asked, what are you looking for in a quarterback? I mean, yeah, they wanted a guy with size. They certainly didn't get it here. He's the shortest of all the quarterbacks that were considered up at the top of the draft. Yeah, you want him to be accurate. He is the most accurate, but the most important ingredient was, and he stressed it here tonight, he's a winner. He's a competitor, and that fire he loves. But he had to sell that throughout the entire press conference, and he was challenged on it, his off-the-field activities and the problems he's had off the field, some of his antics on the field. He says basically he's a young kid. We all get a second chance. I'm a better person now than I was a year ago. This is Dorsey speaking. And so I think we have to give a guy a second chance. He just loves the way he plays quarterback, and he thinks he's going to be not just a good quarterback, he thinks he's going to be a great quarterback. The head coach, I think, basically, again, was quick to point out he's not the starting quarterback this year. Tyrod Taylor is the starting quarterback. And according to both gentlemen, Dorsey and Hugh Jackson, that Baker Mayfield knows that, is aware of that. Although John Dorsey later in the press conference said, Baker Mayfield is going to compete. And why not compete? I mean, you want open competition. It makes everybody better. So that's what I think he was doing, Dino, in the press conference. It was a 15 to 20-minute hard sell on the doubters of Baker Mayfield, at least being chosen number 1 overall.
I get you. If you heard my side, Jimmy, it just goes back to apparently the plan that Dorsey had said that they were going to go with. It just sounds like it was completely spun around during the course of this evaluation process of Baker Mayfield, and they became infatuated with him as a winner, more so than, okay, well, the fact that we brought in this Tyrod Taylor to be the starter and Drew Stanton to groom and mentor a youngster who wasn't going to necessarily be asked to do a lot right away, so we could go out and start winning games. Now all of a sudden we're starting to think about quarterback controversies and fiery competitors. It's a different feel than what had been sold, I think, over the last couple of months.
Well, I think he would like it to be a happy camp. It would be, hey, it's a happy camp, and Tyrod Taylor's the starting quarterback. But I think, and I can see his point in this, he's looking beyond the year that Tyrod Taylor is going to be the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns at least 1 year. I don't know if there's going to be more for Tyrod Taylor. That's going to have to be played out on the field and at the negotiating table because he's eligible to be a free agent at season's end. But I do believe he's looking, next year, the year after that, the year after that. He is very convinced, and he made a hard sell about it just a few moments ago in the media room, that Baker Mayfield wasn't even close to the other guys as far as the evaluation was concerned, that he is positive that he has chosen the right quarterback to go on into the future with the Cleveland Browns. And if that future competitively is sooner rather than later, then the Browns will be better for it. I think that's the lasting image that I got in the final few moments of the press conference. That, yeah, if he comes in and he competes at such a high level that he's obviously very, very good, and he's ready to be on the field, and I stress ready to be on the field, that they don't push him out there, then, yeah, they would be very comfortable with pushing the agenda and pushing it forward and pushing it up on the calendar a little bit quicker than they thought. But I do believe that, they come into training camp, and they're going to have to reinforce that, I think, every day now, that they have a starting quarterback, and it is Tyrod Taylor until further notice.
Jim, does the selection of Baker Mayfield undermine at all Tyrod Taylor's ability to be a leader for this team, specifically on the offensive side of the ball?
Well, that's a good question, Matt. I mean, it's this guy comes in and has been very vocal at the combine and even in some of his pre-draft interviews. That and I think he came out at one point when he was questioned maybe by some New York writers, and he said basically, "Hey, listen." I would go in and try and beat out Eli Manning if he went to the New York Giants. Eli Manning is a 2-time Super Bowl champion, MVP in the Super Bowl every time that they won it, those 2 times that they beat the New England Patriots. He is definitely not short on confidence. And now Tyrod Taylor, I think he should be very comfortable with the endorsement that the Browns have given him, the opportunity that the Browns have given him. I think the Browns want him definitely to be their starting quarterback this year. But he's going to have to go out and play to that level and be the quarterback, and I think they fully expect that he's going to do that. Now, the undermining situation, I don't know Tyrod Taylor enough that he would be shaken by Baker Mayfield being in camp and kind of really nipping at his heels to try and be the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. The other interesting thing, Matt and guys, is I would think that the Browns are going to have to create a certain chapter in their playbook to put Baker Mayfield in a position where he's going to be comfortable. I would think the RPOs, that run-pass option, is going to have to, exist in the Browns' offense when Baker Mayfield is in there and down the road when it is his offense, because if you don't do that, you're not going to play to really his strength. His strength is his mobility, the ability to get back. John Dorsey pointed out, of all the quarterbacks in the draft in this class, he drops back and gets into a throwing position in the pocket quicker than everybody else. So his feet and his legs are an important part of his game. His mobility, his ability to throw on the run and outside the pocket, and they feel he is comfortable in the pocket. They said of any of the quarterbacks, he had the fewest passes that were batted down at the line of scrimmage. But I do believe that there would have to be kind of a Baker Mayfield offense put in by the Browns to really tap into his strengths.
Jim, again, with the number 4 pick, finally we got an Ohio State Buckeye, a local kid. What did Dorsey have to say about the number 4 pick and the reason why he took Denzel Ward?
He thinks he's going to be a great cornerback. And, Steve, I think that, and I was in this camp, I felt that if Bradley Chubb was on the board, and lo and behold he was, I thought that was the way to go to add more pass rush. But I think, some other people feel that the cornerback position is such a position of need on this team, and specifically a young cornerback that they can develop, that they needed to go get a cornerback, and they loved him, and they feel that how he played at Ohio State and how he was coached at Ohio State and his overall athletic abilities, he's going to be a great cornerback. Now, he better be, because he's the number 4 pick. And the fact that he's a hometown kid, it can be a great thing. It can also be a pressure factor playing in your own hometown. But the fact of the matter is, I think Greg Williams, the defensive coordinator of the Browns, was forced to really coach his defense with maybe both of his hands tied behind his back. They just could not play well and tight and effectively in the secondary last year with Jamar Taylor and Justin and McCourty being out there and anyone else they put in there. I think it's time that the Cleveland Browns have to develop their own cornerbacks, and it was a position of need, and they wanted him, and they feel that he's going to be a terrific player. And let's hope he is, because I think it's important for them to be able to play much better in the secondary than they did last year.
Jimmy, the fact that Dorsey and Jackson already spoke, does that mean we should not expect any more activity from them tonight, or is still a possibility they may move into the first round with the stockpile of second-round picks and other things that they have?
I was surprised at that. I was surprised that they came down when they came down, because typically they can very easily use the excuse, and it's not an excuse really, when I think about it, but they can say, hey, listen, it's a very fluid situation. It's the first round. There may be some telephone calls to be made. There have been deals, as you guys have been chronicling through the first round, that teams have made in the first round to get up and get quarterbacks and get the rest of the quarterbacks off the board. And they stayed in the media room for a long period of time. So I got the sense as they walked out that they might be done for the night, that it might be over for the night, and they're ready to go into the second round, and they'll lead it off again tomorrow with pick number 33 and see what they do at that point in time. Now, there are other people that feel that the Browns have the ammunition and the motive to go back up into the first round to maybe take a shot at an offensive tackle. I think a lot of people thought maybe that might be the move at some point to get a cornerback, but of course they've already addressed that with Denzel Ward being chosen at number 4. But, it just seemed, Dino, like they might be done for the night. Now, things can change at a moment's instant, but I wouldn't be surprised if the next time they pick is at 33 when they start off the second round coming up tomorrow evening.
Jim, Baker Mayfield, number 1 pick. Is there any reason why we haven't heard from him right now? Normally by now you hear from the number 1 pick.
Well, I can tell you this. He's not doing any interviews. Steve, if
really?
Yeah, he is not doing any on-camera interviews right now. He is going to do a conference call in the media room, but he is not doing on-camera interviews now. Read it. You can read into this. You don't even have to read into it. It's fact. I mean, he is doing his own documentary series that is going on right now. And the final part, I think, is the drafting of Baker Mayfield. So I'm sure in that deal, he's got some exclusivity thing. But you're right. You haven't seen him on ESPN or on the NFL Network. He's in Austin, Texas in his home. The Browns hierarchy said that he was in tears when they called him up to tell him that he was the #1 overall pick and coming to Cleveland. And I think they are going to have him on the telephone, and they will have him here tomorrow. He is coming in here tomorrow, and he will have a press conference with the local and national media who stay around to be here for the second day of the draft. But right now, I think that's why you're not seeing him. I think there's a little showbiz. Imagine that. And I think he's got a little exclusive deal with this infomercial, a documentary that he's doing about himself. How about that?
What a shocker. That just blows my mind. Jimmy, thank you so much. We'll look forward to getting your thoughts later on tonight on Channel 3 News at 11, and then we'll see you out in Berea tomorrow. But we appreciate you joining us here throughout the night.
Good to be with you guys. Thanks.
All right. That's the voice of the Browns and Channel 3 sports anchor Jim Donovan joining us. Boy, a lot to take in from that.
I told you it was a great story.
It is. And oh, by the way, earlier this week we started to hear some rumblings a little bit about Hard Knocks and maybe the Browns being picked for Hard Knocks. I would think at this point, with the Mayfield situation now, you could probably almost book it.
Here's what I have to say about that. You got away with it without with Manziel in your building. You didn't have to do it then.
Because you had a first-year coach and Mike Pettin there at the time.
You're not getting away with it again.
Nope. Come on down, HBO. Wow.
I don't know. They may have some controversy with this documentary.
Exactly.
They may not be able to record Baker Mayfield. Who knows?
I'm sure Hugh Jackson would be like, oh, that's too bad.
I thought it was strange that we hadn't heard from him.
Right.
I mean, not any interviews, no cameras in his home.
Because even if you're not at the draft, I mean, Joe Thomas is one of the few exceptions.
Right.
Even if you're not actually at the draft, they usually have a camera, NFL Network or ESPN or whatever. They'll get you at home and get a few words from you, and then Sirius satellite radio will get you. We didn't hear anything, and I mean Denzel Ward already had his conference call with the media, and he meant the whole thing about Baker Mayfield planting the flag at the Ohio State 50-yard line after Oklahoma beat the Buckeyes last year was brought up, and Ward said, I didn't like it. No, I didn't like it at all, but he's my teammate now. We've got something to accomplish. So, but bygones aren't necessarily bygones when it comes to that. All right, while we were talking to Jimmy, let's get you caught up on what we've missed. There have been a flurry of trades, and there's actually another one coming here. Let's see. We started with the 13th pick. We left off there. Daron Payne, a defensive tackle from Alabama. Another just like McCoy. Another Alabama defensive tackle for Nick Saban. I mean, that's. He goes to Washington, and you figure he'll have an opportunity to play and play well there. The New Orleans Saints went from 27 all the way up to the 14th pick. They spent next year's #1 to do it.
Wow.
And they took the guy that they had targeted all along from little-known University of Texas San Antonio, outside linebacker Marcus Davenport.
Athletic, rangy, amazing at getting to the quarterback, even if it's rushing from the other side and having to chase him down after the quarterback scrambles out of the pocket. This is a good pick. The value of it, you can kind of hedge your bet on, but credit to the Saints for going and getting the guy that they wanted.
They're in win-now mode in New Orleans.
Because, Sean Payton's been around for a long time. Drew Brees is getting towards the end of his playing career. They're not getting any younger. They have an explosive offense. Now they get a defensive guy in Marcus Davenport that loves to make plays in the backfield. Party at the quarterback when Marcus Davenport's on the field.
I mean, we think about the Saints when they won the Super Bowl in 2010, or actually 2009. They certainly had the offense and they had the running game. but they don't win without the defense. And they had a great set of linebackers. Scott Fujita, who ended up becoming a Brown, was one of them. I mean, you got to have.
Secondary was stacked.
And their
too.
secondary was stacked too. I mean, they got to get some play. I mean, you got to get a playmaker there, so that Drew Brees doesn't have to put up 50 points a game to win.
Right. Well, you talk about, I've been saying it all night, playmakers. I mean, obviously the Saints, they understand that they need guys who can come in and play right away and who can have an impact on the defensive side of the ball. I like the pick. I think he's going to, obviously his talent can translate to the next level. But at the same time, they did pay a hefty price to move up, to give up a first-round pick in next year's draft. I mean, you didn't even see that for I think Buffalo, the Buffalo pick when they moved up to number 10. No. They gave up a 3 and a 5.
Yeah, so this was to go 27 to 14, so to move up 13 spots necessitated a first-round pick. And then also at 15, the Oakland Raiders, by virtue of them moving down from 10 to 15, they took offensive tackle Colton Miller from UCLA. And you've seen Tremaine Edmonds just came off the board as well. We'll get to him in a second. But Derek Carr is going to be a happy guy. They've got to keep him healthy. Well, they've got to keep him healthy and upright. So John Gruden decides, first and foremost, I'm going to get an offensive tackle.
Well, with what Denver did at number 5, it was almost imperative for the Raiders to go get a lineman. And Colton Miller is probably the second or third best tackle in this draft, depending upon who you, what scouting service you use. But he really is a solid tackle. He's not going to be a world beater, but he's gonna do the job for you, and that is exactly what the Raiders needed. They needed somebody that could step in there, do the job, and keep Derek Carr upright and healthy. They go as good of a defensive player as Khalil Mack is. The Raiders go how Derek Carr goes.
It's been a good draft so far if you're an edge rusher. I mean, Tremaine Edmonds just comes off now at 16 as he goes to Buffalo by virtue of a trade with the Baltimore Ravens. So if you're Buffalo tonight, you say, well, okay, so far so good. We got a quarterback, a guy that we all, I think, could do well there in Buffalo and Allen in those conditions. And now you get a guy to help lead your defense in Edmonds.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I'm still stuck on number 1.
I mean, listen, we're gonna be stuck on number 1 for months.
Years.
I mean,
years. This just doesn't make sense. I mean, obviously, this Tremaine Edmonds is a great player, but I'm still trying to figure out, where Dorsey is going with the number 1 pick.
Well, you heard Jim Donovan say, while we were kind of looking at some of the other players, you heard Jimmy's talk about this. I mean, it was 15 to 20 minutes of just having to sell a first overall pick. That's unheard. I mean,
unheard of.
That's unheard of. I mean, I think about maybe Jeff George or something like that. I mean, there aren't many first overall picks that you sit there and you go, really, him?
I know they did a good job of trying to sell it. I want to know who the heck's buying it.
Yeah.
Because I imagine in that building right now, there are a lot of people probably scratching their heads like, you did what? We've got to sell that. Look, he's going to sell jerseys. People are going to come to the ballpark to see him, and maybe that was the whole impetus behind it. But we've been down that road before.
I was going to say, what is this, Johnny Mill Part 2?
Right. Jimmy Haslam should have known better, learning from past mistakes, that they've been down this road before, and that it doesn't have a happy ending. Yeah. It's a dead end.
I'm going to go back when we wrap up the show tonight. I'm going to go back and I want to hear. And again, it's a different regime, but I'd love to hear what Ray Farmer and Mike Pettin said about Manziel when they drafted him. I'm quite sure we heard he's hungry, Heisman Trophy winner, lots of success in college, hungry. I'm sure we heard very productive, put up big numbers. I'm quite sure we heard the same thing. It doesn't necessarily mean he's a gamer. He's a winner.
Look, 6-foot gamers don't win consistently in the NFL outside of the God-given ability that we've seen out of Drew Brees. Drew Brees is that rare breed where he actually takes his craft seriously. He spends time working at it. He doesn't just walk onto the field and think that he's going to win games. He puts in the time by himself with his teammates, watching film, lifting, putting himself in good cardio shape. That is what you need out of your gamer. You need a guy that's going to put in the work.
That's it.
Well, two of the undersized quarterbacks in the league, and Russell Wilson and Drew Brees, are pretty humble guys. They kind of stay behind the scenes. They're low-key. They lead their teams by example. They're not really loudmouths or, kind of mouthing off in that kind of way. It's tough to...
What did you guys think about this? This was Baker Mayfield who tweeted and Instagrammed a picture of him with a Brett Favre lookalike on draft day. And I guess Favre loved it, but Mayfield on the left, Favre on the right. I mean, whatever.
It's all fun and games till the Steelers blitz you.
As I said, you had the undersized quarterbacks who have a lot of humility,
right.
And he's the exact opposite of that. So we're going to see. He's going to have to put his money where his mouth is because people are going to expect him to come in here and to play. I'm just going to tell you right now, people are going to expect him to come and play. I don't care what Hugh Jackson says. I don't care what Dorsey says. He's expecting himself to come in here and play right away.
And when you're the #1 overall pick in the draft, there's a whole lot of people that spend a whole lot of money to migrate to that stadium every Sunday to see that #1 overall pick play. The fans may not like it now, but after training camp, after the preseason, if he makes any kind of play in the preseason or has a wonderful throw that goes viral during training camp, boom, they're going to want him in there right away. His first mistake from Tyrod Taylor. I feel so sorry for Tyrod Taylor. He cannot breathe wrong before people are going to question whether or not Baker Mayfield should play.
Especially, we saw it with Brady Quinn. I can go back to 2007 when Quinn in the preseason, Quinn is up against Anderson and Charlie Fry. And Quinn had a preseason game against the Lions where he led the Browns back from a deficit, ended up going into overtime. And, for the friends and family that hang around in the fourth quarter of a preseason game, and actually was pretty decent sized crowd. It was like the Browns were on their way to the Super Bowl because this was the young rookie quarterback who's going to lead us, and it was Quinn. And then in 2014, it was Manziel. And every time Brian Hoyer made a mistake, it was like, okay, Hoyer, Manziel. I thought we were gonna have a break from that. I really did.
Heck, even last year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
When you talk about that team with Brady Quinn, I was on that team. I was in that game playing in the fourth quarter trying to make the team at that point in time. And I remember being around the locker room and there being some of a split locker room.
Yeah.
Some people wanted DA to continue. He had a Pro Bowl year, I think, the year before or 2 years before. And then you got Brady Quinn, who comes in with the high-profile first-round draft pick, and people are expecting him to come in and play and compete. And this didn't work out for either guy actually in Cleveland, but because we had two guys, and if you have two quarterbacks, you have no quarterback.
Right, exactly right. By the way, Sam Darnold was asked by the New York media, when did you realize you weren't going first overall to the Cleveland Browns? Darnold's answer, quote, "My phone didn't ring. That was kind of the first sign." Dynamite drop in Sam Darnold. I think he is going to do very, very well, by the way, in New York. I think that was a great pick for the Jets.
I do, too.
You know what?
To sit with Josh McCown and Teddy Bridgewater.
For as many times as we've talked about the Jets having their quarterback struggles, Dino, I think they got it right this time.
I do, too. I think the Jets had a good night. I think the Giants I think the New York Post and the New York Daily News are going to actually be nice to the Giants and Jets for a change. I went through that. But I mean Barkley to the Giants and Darnold to the Jets. Two very sensible picks.
Well, I go back to Barkley, man. I think that guy is a playmaker who is going to immediately have an impact on the Giants team. If you think about Odell Beckham Jr., Saquon Barkley, you got Ingram at tight end, you got, I think, Shepard, the other wide receiver. You got playmakers all over the field. And so Eli Manning is like a kid in a candy store.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it would be nice. It would be nice to be Eli. All right, that's going to do it for us as we head to the 10 o'clock hour. More coverage at WKYC.com. Matt and I will have stories up later on tonight, and then we're back in Berea tomorrow watching the second and third rounds play themselves out. And who knows what could happen at that point. If there is any more first-round activity by the Browns, we will jump back on Facebook Live and have reaction. Thanks to our great crew, Matt and Vince. Thanks to Stephanie Metzger. Thank you to the great Jim Donovan and Will Ewick. Steve Sanders, thank you very much
Yeah,
for coming in,
great
my friend.
job,
Great
as
to
always,
see you
Steve.
again. And for Matt Florjancic, always a pleasure. I'm Dave DeNatale. Baker Mayfield, Denzel Ward, your newest members of the Cleveland Browns. Have a good night, everyone.